Batman's Owl Godfather. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 26. Batboy is very narrow-minded. How can you jump to conclusions like that? Katoom denied. Since you've thought of it this far, I'll admit it. I'm actually the half-blood prince. You can tell from my appearance, I'm a mix of an orange cat and an eagle. After hearing this nonsense, Bruce had no doubts. The half-blood prince was Snape. Otherwise, Snape wouldn't be so conflicted. Even if he wasn't, the half-blood prince and Bruce had a deep connection. Even after that, he stopped giving Bruce so much trouble, and the two potions classes passed without incident. When Snape dismissed the class and the Hufflepuffs climbed the stairs out of the dungeon, everyone looked at Bruce with curiosity. They had been so pent up, afraid to ask questions during class, but now, after class, they finally swarmed around Bruce. "How did you do it?" Justin exclaimed excitedly. "You gave an answer that even Snape couldn't dispute." Of course he couldn't question it. Because that method was Snape's, Bruce reasoned. To deny Bruce would be to deny his past self. "I discovered this through my own experiments." Perhaps Professor Snape prefers students who like to think. He casually answered the question and prepared to go to the cafeteria for lunch. Then, a cold voice sounded from behind him. Wayne. Looking back, Snape was standing at the end of the corridor, looking at him with a gloomy temperament. He wrapped his whole body in a black robe, looking like an old bat. The young wizards around him immediately scattered, fearing that they would be spotted by Snape. "Professor Snape." Bruce came to Snape with a textbook in his arms. Snape's expression did not change at all. "Write a paper on Polyjuice Potion. The paper must be no less than 12 inches. Submit it to me next week." 12 inches is equivalent to 30 centimeters. For a first-year student, this is a huge task. "And, Professor, is the content about Polyjuice Potion beyond the scope of the syllabus?" Bruce asked. "This is content for the higher grades." "So what?" Snape's lips curled in an unpleasant smile. "Our potions genius can't even write a paper? Remember, if you just copy stuff from a book, I'll definitely fail you." He was testing me. Bruce immediately understood that Snape assigned this paper to test his potion talent. Owl Katoom took the opportunity to fan Bruce's flames. "Wayne, youngster, we made it from Gotham, let's not lose face. Come on, it's just a paper, let's do it," Bruce mentally grumbled. What on earth could Katoom have to do with this paper? The owl would definitely not write a single word. In the end, he had to shoulder the entire task himself. "Why, can't you write it?" Snape added a timely sarcasm. Although he knew it was a provocation, Bruce agreed. Batboy doesn't shy away from a challenge. After Bruce accepted the assignment, Snape left with a blank expression. Bruce, however, looked thoughtful, his head bowed in silence. Katoom said to Bruce, "Think about it. He only asked you to write an essay, not actually brew a potion. Polyjuice Potion is very difficult to make. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Hermione spent 6 months in the girls' bathroom brewing it. Perhaps only Harry and Ron knew how rich the flavor could be." "I'm not angry about the extra assignment," Bruce said calmly. "I'm just thinking about how to complete it to the best of my ability, so that it will leave a lasting memory for Snape." Katoom suddenly felt a chill. "Snape, you're in trouble. Batboy, you're so petty." The afternoon classes were much easier than the morning, one herbology class and one history of magic class. The herbology teacher was Ms. Sprout, the head of Hufflepuff House. She was short and plump, but always smiling, and adorned with various herbs. Classes took place in the greenhouse behind the castle. First graders primarily learned how to cultivate a variety of exotic plants and fungi and understand their uses. The young wizards followed Professor Sprout's instructions, and the class was a complete success. However, after class, Bruce lingered to ask Professor Sprout a question. "Are you asking about sapweed?" Sprout immediately became alert. "Isn't that an ingredient in Polyjuice Potion?" "Wayne, what are you trying to do? It's a serious violation of school rules for students to brew Polyjuice Potion." "No, Professor Sprout, I just have a question," Bruce said, feigning the demeanor of a good student. I've heard that sapweed can only be harvested during a full moon because it exhibits completely opposite properties at other times. Is that true? Seeing it was merely an academic question, Professor Sprout lowered his guard. She regained her smiling face. Oh, that's right. The leech during a full moon represents upright magical power, while the leech during an unfull moon represents reverse magic. I see. Thanks, Professor. Bruce thanked Sprout and left. Katoom flew after him, already understanding what Batboy was up to. Look, you're a fast reader of the Half-Blood Prince, he said. You're trying to brew a variant of Polyjuice potion, aren't you? The Half-Blood Prince's 7th grade textbook included several ideas for improving existing potions, including Polyjuice potion. The original Polyjuice potion transformed the drinker into someone else. There was no antidote. After drinking it, one had to wait for the transformation time to end. The Half-Blood Prince was extremely dissatisfied with this. He felt that the lack of an antidote for a potion was an insult to his talent for potions. So he painstakingly devised a possible antidote for the Polyjuice potion and wrote it down in his textbook. However, there was no further information, perhaps because the potion was never concocted. The Half-Blood Prince actually failed, Bruce said. He wrote a recipe for a potion in the back that, after drinking it, allows the person to retain their original appearance, unaffected by any potions or spells. This potion can only prevent the Polyjuice potion from happening, but it can't reverse it. At this point, Bruce thought of the resentment revealed in the Half-Blood Prince's handwriting as he wrote the recipe. But, he suddenly said, if Snape had studied it more deeply, he'd have discovered that he'd actually created a completely new potion, requiring only one ingredient to be changed. The first ingredient in the Polyjuice potion brewing process is leech, picked during a full moon. Upright magic allows a person to retain their original appearance. Reverse magic, however, reverses a person's attributes, such as gender. Bruce wanted to brew a potion that would temporarily transform a person into another gender, to give Snape some fond memories. Katoom said, then you must have thought about who you're giving this potion to. Bruce nodded. They both thought in their hearts, that is, Bruce, Snape, Katoom, Harry Potter. Chapter 27 Harry Potter. Huh? Bruce and Katoom stared at each other, confused as to what the other was talking about. How could you give it to Snape? Katoom protested loudly. I don't want to see a greasy old man turned into a greasy old woman. Why would I give it to Potter? Bruce's reaction was even more intense. I don't even know him. And I only want to deal with Snape. Why would I drag anyone else into this? Katoom pounced on Bruce's face. I don't care, just follow my lead. I want to have fun. Impossible, Bruce flatly refused, waving away the owl. I made the potion. I can't give it to you. With a contract in place, Bruce had no fear of the demon upending his plans. Everything had to be done his way. Even brewing potions was no different. You think you're the only one who can make potions? Katoom flew back a distance. The Demon King can do anything, and I can make them too. He displayed his wings, as nimble as his hands. Bruce sneered, you don't have the ingredients. Compound potions are expensive, Katoom retorted, don't you have any, either? I can buy them. Bruce finally revealed his wicked face. I'm the heir to the Wayne Group. I'm broke, all I have left is money, haha, Katoom sneered, his mind racing. You can buy, but I can steal? I'll steal from you, Bruce, first. If that doesn't work, I'll steal from Snape. For the next few days, Bruce and Katoom, each guarding the other like a thief, refused to reveal any progress on their potion brewing. Thursday afternoon, Bruce finished his classes and headed to the hall for lunch, his books in hand. Katoom stood tall above him, looking down at everyone, unwilling to come down. Bruce held his breath. If you don't come down, then don't come down. He'll just think of it as a hat. Bruce. Justin sat down next to Bruce. He first glanced at the owl above Bruce's head, then whispered, what's wrong? Are you having a conflict with your pet? Don't mind him. Bruce took a bite of the sandwich and chewed it hard. He's sick, forcing a boy he didn't know to drink a potion. What else could that be? And he said it was just for fun. Bruce couldn't understand what Harry turning into a girl had to do with Snape. What kind of fun could there be? Justin smiled awkwardly and decided not to get involved in the argument between Bruce and Katoom. Bruce ate his dinner while flipping through the newspaper. A piece of news caught his attention. Latest report on the Gringotts break-in incident. The investigation into the break-in at Gringotts on July 31st is still ongoing. It is generally believed that it was done by an unknown dark wizard. The goblins at Gringotts reiterated today that nothing was stolen. The underground vault searched by the intruders had actually been emptied earlier that day. A Gringotts goblin spokesperson said this afternoon, "We have no information on what's in the vault, and please refrain from interfering." Gringotts? Bruce thought back to a previous visit to Gringotts, where a goblin had told him the vault was the safest place in the world. And it was burglarized? It wasn't safe either. Wait, someone else seemed to have told him Hogwarts was the safest place in the world. Just as Bruce was still lost in thought, the voices of two boys suddenly drifted in from outside the gate. "Potions class is tomorrow, and honestly, I think Professor Snape might hate me." "Why?" "You only met once, at the sorting ceremony." Bruce looked up and saw it was Harry Potter and his red-haired friend. As they slowly walked away, Bruce's head suddenly felt light. He touched his head. Oh no, the owl was gone. Bruce jumped to his feet. He knew without a second thought that Katoom had gone after Harry. Was his potion finished? So quickly? With a Half-Blood Prince's notes as a guide, Bruce didn't need to endure the 6 months Hermione had to endure. It would still take about a week, though. Katoom was much faster, brewing the potion in just a few days. Bruce hurried to catch up. No doubt Katoom had secretly placed the brewed potion near Harry. However, just as he was chasing Harry's back, a girl suddenly called out to him. "Bruce." He turned and saw Hermione smiling as she approached him. It was she who had greeted him. "How have you been?" Hermione, clutching a book, approached Bruce. "Our two houses don't have classes together. Are your relationships with your classmates all right?" During this delay, Bruce saw Katoom fly back. His triumphant flight showed he had succeeded. Then, Katoom landed right on Bruce's head. "Katoom. That's not good." Seeing Katoom's expression, Hermione tiptoed and scooped the owl down. "Are you guys having a fight?" Hermione held the owl in her arms. "You're not usually like this, are you?" "No, there's no fight now." Seeing the owl's expression, Bruce knew that everything was irreversible. Even if he wanted to steal the potion back, Katoom would definitely stop him. He can only leave it to fate. "Harry. I'll apologize to you later." Bruce finally gave up and focused his attention on Hermione. Then he noticed something was wrong. Why did Hermione first ask him if he had a good relationship with his classmates? Could it be that Hermione encountered such a problem? The next day, Friday, Gryffindor and Slytherin had potions class. Harry walked towards the dungeon with trepidation. Ever since he'd locked eyes with Snape during the sorting ceremony and the scar on his head had started to hurt, Harry had developed a slight fear of Snape. There was something wrong with his teacher. And Harry could sense that he hated him. "Why are you so nervous?" Ron, who was walking with Harry, noticed something was wrong with his friend. "Are you feeling unwell? Would you like some pumpkin juice?" Ron handed Harry his water bottle. Harry was indeed a little thirsty. "No, I'll just drink some water." He took out his water bottle, took a few gulps, and then let out a long sigh. Never mind, maybe it was just his imagination, and Snape didn't really hate him that much. "Ron, let's go." As Harry spoke, he suddenly felt something was wrong with his body. As if melting, his appearance began to change, his body became smaller, and his hair began to grow, slowly turning red. Ron was terrified. He watched his good friend, the black-haired boy Harry Potter, turn into a red-haired girl right in front of him. "Ah!" Ron suddenly screamed. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28. Who is Lily? In the hospital wing, Madame Pomfrey carefully examined Harry. Harry, now utterly unaccustomed to his girlish body, was also bewildered by Ron's presence. With his red hair, Harry looked like a Weasley relative. Everything is normal. No signs of dark magic. It will dissipate in due time. Madame Pomfrey put away her examination tools. It might be some kind of magical prank, but it's harmless and won't delay your next class. Harry felt slightly relieved. Professor Snape would surely be furious if he skipped his first potions class. Ron, hearing the prank, had a vague image of the culprit in his mind. It had to be them. Madame Pomfrey, we'll be leaving then. Harry and Ron hurried out of the hospital wing. Class was about to start. We couldn't be late. Hermione reached the door to the dungeon when she heard the sound of flapping wings. She turned and looked, a look of surprise on her face. Katoom, the owl, Bruce's constant companion, had flown in for some unknown reason. It landed on Hermione's shoulder, and she stroked its feathers. "Why are you here? Are you still arguing with Bruce?" Hermione said with a hint of joy in her resignation. "That's all I can do. You should stay with me for a while." She felt that all the delicious food she'd fed Katoom hadn't been in vain. The owl must have missed her after not seeing it for so long. Hermione carried Katoom into the classroom, and two young wizards hurried in. One of them, a red-haired girl, plopped down next to her, breathing heavily. "Great. We made it." Joining the girls was Ron Weasley, Hermione's classmate. Hermione looked around, but couldn't see Harry, who usually hung out with Ron. "Ron, where's Harry?" Hermione asked, frowning. "Is he skipping class?" "I must warn you, skipping class is a serious violation of school rules." "Hermione, I'm here." The red-haired girl next to Hermione timidly raised her hand. The girl's uniform bore the Gryffindor emblem, but Hermione had never seen one before. Hermione frowned. "Who are you?" "I'm Harry." Harry, now Harry, adjusted his glasses. "Did you forget? You fixed these glasses for me." Even if Hermione didn't believe him, he leaned closer and lifted her hair, revealing the lightning scar on his forehead. Hiss! Hermione leaned back, gasping for air, her eyes widening. "How could you be like this?" Harry smiled bitterly. "Someone played a prank on you. Ron said he knows who it was and will take me to settle the score with them later." This, Hermione couldn't accept it. Even if it was a prank, it was too bad. Especially since their conversation had been overheard by the young wizards nearby. Draco Malfoy, a Slytherin, and his friends Crabbe and Goyle were already chuckling, their hands covering their mouths. "That little girl is Potter," he declared deliberately. "There's no more boy who lived, because Potter's a girl." Ha 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 ha. His followers laughed even louder. The other young wizards were also whispering among themselves, occasionally glancing in their direction. Harry lowered his head, feeling embarrassed and uncomfortable. Bang! Suddenly, the door to the dungeon burst open, and Snape strode in with a swift, impetuous stride. His face was expressionless, his aura gloomy. The entire classroom fell silent, everyone sitting upright, staring intently ahead. Except for Harry, who still didn't dare look up. "Let's begin roll call." Snape, as usual, without any greetings, simply took up the roll and began calling the names. Every time a name was called, someone immediately answered. Until the name he had already etched deep into his bones was called, "Harry Potter," he said coldly. "Oh, yes, this is our new arrival, the famous one," and then, he didn't hear the word "here." "Harry Potter," Snape repeated. Still no one answered. "It seems our famous one has no sense of courtesy." Snape raised his head expressionlessly. He searched for the unpleasant face, but found nothing. "So he's been absent from class," Snape sneered. "Gryffindor will deduct points for Potter's folly, Professor." Suddenly, a weak voice interrupted Snape's next words. "I'm here." However, Snape didn't respond. When he heard the voice, he froze in place as if under a petrifying spell. "Coo!" Katoom jumped up and down on Hermione's desk, looking very happy. Snape's mind was wandering, his memory drifting to memories of the distant past. Two girls were swinging on the swings, a skinny boy watching them from behind a bush. "Does being a Muggle-born make any difference?" The girl's voice still echoed in his ears, exactly the same as the one he had just heard. Snape seemed to see that bright and lively girl again, but that was over 20 years ago. The young wizards in the audience were already buzzing with discussion, and Snape's abnormality caught their eye. Isn't that right?" Ron whispered in disbelief. "Snape," he cried, "don't lie," Hermione corrected him quickly. The professor's eyes were just a little wet. "Maybe he didn't sleep well last night, ahem." Finally, Snape forced himself out of his memories. The voice he had just heard was incredibly similar, exactly like Lily's. But it couldn't be. Lily was dead, leaving behind only a son, Harry Potter, who looked just like James and was incredibly annoying. Oh, right, Potter. Only then did Snape remember what he had been doing. "Potter skipped class, Professor." "I didn't skip class." Harry, who had been keeping his head down, finally got anxious. He suddenly stood up and looked at Snape. Snape was caught off guard and saw the face that was buried deep in his memory. Boom, like a huge bell ringing in his head, Snape's whole body began to tremble uncontrollably. Was it a dream? He couldn't help but shout out a name, "Lily." "Coo coo coo." Katoom jumped even more happily on the table, so happily that Hermione had to pin him down on the table. Hush! Although Hermione reminded Katoom, her eyes were still fixed on Professor Snape. This strange atmosphere had ignited the gossip fire in her heart. Lily, who is it? Chapter 29, Very honest, Gryffindor 10 points. Professor, Harry called out to Snape, frowning. Why did he just seem to hear him calling his mother's name? Snape jolted awake, glancing around the classroom and realizing he wasn't dreaming. But what about this girl? All the young wizards in the room were staring at Snape, their eyes ablaze with curiosity, eager to know the name he had just called out. Snape needed an explanation. He himself had noticed this and began frantically thinking of a solution. Lily. Lily. Snape finally came up with an idea. Here's a question for you, he said sternly. If I add powdered narcissus root to an infusion of wormwood, what will I get? Clearly, you blockheads haven't grasped my meaning. The narcissus he was referring to was a lily that resembled a daffodil in potions. Almost without thinking, Hermione raised her hand. But Snape didn't call for an answer. He hadn't really wanted to ask a question. He was focused on the red-haired girl before him. Why did she look so much like Lily? Only his eyes looked a bit like that annoying James Potter. It seems you all don't know the answer, Snape sneered, then feigned composure and said to Harry, which house are you from? What's your name, Professor? I'm Harry Potter, Harry whispered. Someone played a prank on me and turned me into a girl, ha 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 ha. Malfoy and his followers burst into laughter. Shut up, Snape's tone was filled with unprecedented anger. He stared at Malfoy coldly and asked, is it funny? Malfoy felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, his previous impertinence gone. He shook his head repeatedly. No, it's not funny. If it's not funny, then shut up, Snape said coldly. Students should love each other, Mr. Malfoy. Because of your rudeness, Slytherin will be deducted 10 points. At this moment, Malfoy was stunned. No, Professor, are you serious? Deducting points from Slytherin? You're the head of Slytherin. Snape flung his robes aside, looked back at Harry, and said calmly, "Oh, Harry, are you saying someone played a prank on you? Did they use a spell? I don't know." Harry shook his head. Madame Pomfrey said it might be a potion, but she didn't know what kind, so that's it. Snape nodded. I didn't expect there could be such a good potion, I mean, such a wicked one. Now you understand how important potions is, don't you? The young wizards below the podium nodded. Well, since it's a potion, Harry, stay a moment. I'll help you check what kind it is. Snape's tone was unusually gentle. Do you know the answer to my question? What does it give when you add powdered narcissus root to an infusion of wormwood? Harry shook his head blankly. I don't know, Professor. Well, that's very honest. Snape nodded. 10 points to Gryffindor for your honesty. Hiss. Now everyone began to doubt the truth of the rumors they had heard about Snape. Or had Snape been replaced, and this one was a fake? After asking one question, Snape didn't stop. He continued. Let's try again. Harry, if I asked you to find me a bezoar, where would you find it? I don't know, sir. Well, very modestly, Snape seemed to have heard the most correct answer. Knowing is knowing, not knowing is not knowing. A true master always has the heart of a student. For your modesty, Gryffindor gets another 10 points. This time, the classroom went beyond gasping for air. An uproar erupted. So Professor Snape was so kind? He wasn't like what the seniors had said. Always picking on students and only giving extra points to Slytherins. Harry, tell me again, what's the difference between Aconitum naviculatum and Aconitum wolfsbane? This time, even Harry felt something was wrong. He felt like Snape wasn't asking a question, but rather wanted to hear his voice. Before he could say anything, someone behind him started arguing, Professor. Me. Perhaps it was because of the kindness Snape had shown before. Some students who wanted to get extra points for their own college began to get restless. Draco Malfoy was the most representative among them. He stood up directly from his seat, raised his arms high, and shouted for him to answer, with an attitude even more fierce than Hermione. Snape suppressed the urge to scold, frowned and called Malfoy's name. Malfoy grinned. Professor, I don't know. With Harry Potter demonstrating in front, how could he not learn by following? It's too easy to get extra points just by saying you don't know. However, the development of things was completely beyond Malfoy's expectations. Idiot, Snape cursed. Do you think ignorance is something to be proud of? Mr. Malfoy, because of your stupidity, Slytherin will deduct another 10 points. Malfoy was stunned. Snape's scolding sounded extremely harsh and shocking to him. "How dare you scold me? My mother never scolded me." Malfoy's mouth pursed and tears fell. Hermione bumped Ron's arm and whispered, "See, this is what it means to really cry. If you want to cry, go outside the classroom," Snape said impatiently, then turned to look at Harry, and his expression changed again. He said gently, "Sit down, Harry, you performed very well today." Harry sat down in a daze. Everything that had just happened seemed like a dream. Is this Hogwarts? It was so good to him. The potions class continued, but the situation of other students did not improve. The students were divided into groups of 2 and instructed to mix a simple potion to treat oils. Snape walked around the classroom, dragging his long black cloak, watching them weigh dry nettles and crush snake fangs. Almost all the students were criticized, only Harry was spared. It seemed that Harry was Snape's favorite student. "You have a talent for potions." Snape stood beside Harry, he had been here no less than 5 times, and praised, "I've never seen anyone who can crush snake fangs into such a creative shape." 5 more points for Gryffindor. "Okay, continue making potions." When Snape walked away a little, Ron suddenly put his head close to Harry. "Harry, how did you do it?" Maybe because he saw Harry turned into a girl with his own eyes, Ron didn't have any psychological burden and stayed very close to Harry. At that moment, Snape, as if he had eyes behind his back, spun around, extended his wand, and moved Ron's body far away from Harry. "Mr. Weasley, didn't your parents tell you that you had to complete the task independently?" Snape said coldly. "For your insolence, Gryffindor will be deducted 10 points. Chapter 30, Hufflepuff's Prophecy. That's pretty much it. In the Hogwarts Great Hall, Hermione, holding her owl, recounted to Bruce what had happened in potions class today. Ever since learning that Hermione had no friends in Gryffindor, Bruce had decided to join Hermione in her study session after school. "So, how's Harry?" Bruce asked. "He's back to form," Hermione said. "Ron's taking him around the school looking for the Weasley twins. I heard they were the ones who pulled the prank." "No, not them." Bruce glanced at the owl Hermione was holding. It was the real culprit. Katoom was smug, clearly having watched what had happened in potions class. "What are you looking at?" the owl said. "Our story isn't over yet. If you apologize now, I'm not saying I won't forgive you." Bruce curled his lips, ignoring Katoom and asking Hermione a crucial question. "What happens next? I mean, now that Harry's a boy again, will Snape still treat him the same way?" "I don't know," Hermione shook her head. "But Harry's already got a huge crush on Snape. He's even looking forward to the next potions class." "Then I wish him good luck." Bruce then let go of the question. Since nothing major had happened and Harry seemed to be enjoying himself, there was no need to reveal the truth. Study time passed quickly. "It's getting late. You should get some rest too." Bruce put away his books and prepared to return to the Hufflepuff common room. Katoom jumped from Hermione's arms and landed on Bruce's head. Man and bird ignored each other, returning to their old ways. Hermione was frustrated. She'd fed Katoom so many snacks today, and yet it had run away without even looking back. Owls should be raised from a young age. "Okay, see you tomorrow." As Bruce turned a corner and was about to reach the common room, a figure suddenly blocked his way. It was Snape. "Good evening, Wayne," Snape said, his pretentious tone still. "I didn't expect to see you." Then he noticed the strange owl on Bruce's head, and his mouth twitched a few times, but he held back a laugh, maintaining his appearance. "Just in time?" Bruce didn't point it out. "Did you specifically block me at the Hufflepuff common room door?" Snape asked. "Have you finished your paper on Polyjuice Potion?" Bruce frowned. "Professor, I remember the deadline is next Monday, and today is only Friday." "I know," Snape said coldly. "But I want to see it today. Is that not okay?" "Why? You won't live to see Monday," Bruce wanted to ask, but finally changed his tone. "I finished it, Professor, just a paper, easy." Bruce's main goal was to have Snape drink the variant Polyjuice Potion on Monday. He pulled the paper from his bag and handed it to Snape. Snape took it, quickly skimmed through it, and sneered. "I knew it." "No what?" Snape looked up at Bruce. "Wayne, Harry turned into a girl today. You made that potion, didn't you?" "Not me." Bruce felt it was a terrible injustice. Why was he being blamed for something Katoom had done? But he couldn't say it out loud. His own owl could brew potions, and no one would believe it if he told them otherwise. Excluding these factors, Bruce wasn't surprised Snape suspected him. This gender-changing potion was an improvement on Snape's original potion ideas. After he examined Harry, he would quickly discover its true nature. Snape, a self-proclaimed genius, would only associate it with another genius. Besides, Bruce was currently working on his thesis on Polyjuice potion. Professor, Bruce tried to defend himself, but was interrupted by Snape. I don't care about anything else. Just rewrite this paper. As long as you can write down the recipe for that potion, I'll consider giving Hufflepuff 50 extra points. With that, Snape strode away, as if he had never been there. Bruce was truly bewildered. Such a simple improvement idea, couldn't you figure it out yourself? He should be afraid of problems, Katoom above his head said at the right time. He is afraid that the potion he developed will not be able to make Harry look like the little red-haired girl. Bruce asked back, why is Snape obsessed with the little red-haired girl? Don't eat this kind of melon, it has nothing to do with you. Katoom changed the subject smoothly. Are you going to hand over the formula? It's 50 points, it doesn't matter whether you hand it over or not, the formula is of no use, Bruce said casually. The Hufflepuff classmates are very nice to me, and there will be no problem in helping them win the College Cup. Don't even think about the College Cup championship, Katoom said. Gryffindor has already been decided as the champion this year. Even if you add more points, Dumbledore can find a few excuses to pull the points back. Why? Bruce frowned. Is there such unfairness within Hogwarts? Oh, don't take it so seriously. There's no substantial reward for this championship, and you're still a champion if you call yourself a champion. Katoom started talking nonsense again. Or they are the champions, and you can strive for a vice championship. I don't know what you're talking about. Bruce shook his head, almost shaking Katoom off his head, and then he walked into the Hufflepuff common room. Don't be so serious. Are you still angry about what happened before? Katoom finally gave in. Okay, these days, I have reflected on yourself for you. You haven't developed a flexible bottom line yet, so it's normal that you can't understand my behavior. Let me put it this way. You are wrong this time. I apologize to you. Bruce almost laughed out loud. You've done everything, and then you just casually apologize and it's all over? Who taught you that? Bruce wanted to continue arguing with Katoom about whose fault it was this time. But just as he entered the common room, someone called out to him. Are you a Hufflepuff? Bruce turned around. The common room was empty. Who was talking? Goosebumps spread across his body. He glanced around the common room and suddenly realized that the portrait of Ms. Hufflepuff, which had been unable to move, was staring at him silently. The expression on Ms. Helga's face was more than just worry. It was fear, an extremely contagious fear. Go tell your headmaster, the Hufflepuff portrait trembled. The end of Hogwarts is coming. From beginning to end, from yesterday to tomorrow, the shadows of the three Dark Lords will cast a shadow over the entire castle. Chapter 31 Hell's Joke also has a boomerang. After saying this, the Hufflepuff in the portrait stopped moving. It was as if the portrait's last glimmer of life was a final warning mechanism left by Hufflepuff herself. When the final task was completed, the magic of the portrait would completely disappear. After hearing this seemingly plausible prophecy, Bruce frowned, thinking about the key words in the prophecy. From the beginning to the end, three Dark Lords, he looked up and asked Katoom in confusion. Where did the three Dark Lords come from? In the history of magic, there are only two who have been called the Dark Lord, right, Grindelwald and Voldemort. Who is the other one? Katoom was also confused. He had read the original Harry Potter books before, so where did the three Dark Lords come from? Could they add Harry Potter? Even if they did, the original book didn't have such a plot. Had the world lines started to change so quickly? Who should I ask? Logically, there are only two Voldemort souls in Hogwarts right now, not three Dark Lords. Wait a minute. Katoom suddenly remembered the diadem he'd hidden in the room of requirement. It was Voldemort's Horcrux, containing fragments of his soul. So, with Quirrell, Harry, and the diadem, there really were three Voldemorts in Hogwarts right now. Don't let that foolishness slip, Katoom snapped back. Did the portrait say you should tell the headmaster? Then go. He also wanted to go to the headmaster's office to find the book, Advanced Dark Arts Unveiled, and get the instructions for making a Horcrux. But at that moment, little Bruce was already confused by Katoom's words. Wait, what do you mean by two Voldemort souls? None of your business. Someone will take care of it. We're just there to scare them. The owl cackled wildly, as if it had seen the solemn expression on Dumbledore's face when he heard the prophecy. Bruce, Hurry up, let's go to AO old man. Their minor disagreement was now completely forgotten. Katoom grabbed Bruce's shirt, dragging him towards the headmaster's office. Bruce clutched his robes and shouted, I can't go directly to the headmaster. I have to go to the dean first. 10 minutes later, Bruce arrived at the headmaster's office, led by Ms. Sprout, the head of Hufflepuff House. Bruce, are you really not lying? Professor Sprout's face was serious. It's okay to joke around in front of me, but you can't talk nonsense in front of the headmaster. I'm really not lying, Bruce said gravely. Ms. Hufflepuff's portrait really told me that. Very well, Professor Sprout chose to believe her student. She was standing before a hideous, gigantic stone monster. Lemon sherbet, she said. This was clearly a command, as the monster suddenly sprang to life, leaped aside, and the wall behind it cracked in two. Behind the wall was a spiral staircase, slowly ascending like an escalator. Professor Sprout led Bruce up to an oak door with a griffin-shaped knocker. The professor knocked on one door, and it opened automatically, revealing no one inside. Dumbledore's gone on an errand, said a portrait of a former headmaster hanging on the wall. I don't know when he'll be back. I see. Ms. Sprout nodded and said to Bruce, then you wait here for a moment. I have something else to do. Don't worry, the headmaster's office is safe. With that, she knelt down, patted Bruce's head with a smile, and then left. Bruce was left alone in the office. Oh no, there was an owl with him. Are all teachers at Hogwarts like this? Katoom asked. He remembered that the first time Harry came to Dumbledore's office, Professor McGonagall had brought him there, and she had just taken him away. Bruce didn't answer. He was observing Dumbledore's office. It was a circular room filled with all sorts of bizarre magical props. The Sorting Hat was there. It was napping. Also, behind the door, perched high on a gilded branch, an old, frail red bird gazed at them with a sorrowful look. This was Dumbledore's companion, Fawkes the Phoenix. It would die next year and rise from its ashes. You rude fellow, Katoom called out to Fawkes. Have you ever seen such a handsome and energetic owl? Fawkes, feeling unlucky, turned away from them. That's more than enough, Katoom said, satisfied. Then he noticed a mirror in the corner of the office. It was a magnificent mirror, reaching all the way to the ceiling, with an ornate golden frame supported by two claw-like feet. Engraved on the top was a line of words that made no sense. Because, when read backwards, it meant, I show you not your face, but your desires. Hello, the Mirror of Ares, Katoom said, intrigued, leaping from Bruce's shoulder and approaching the mirror. Then, suddenly, he saw several ethereal figures standing behind him. These were his relatives from a past life. Seeing them suddenly weighed heavily on Katoom, even his most cynical self. He wondered if they were doing well now. Bruce, too, had arrived before the mirror. In it, he saw his parents appear behind him. Dad? Mom? Bruce was momentarily dazed, then suddenly realized. No, his parents had died before his eyes. How could they be here? He took a sharp step back, not losing himself in the illusion. Not bad, Katoom suddenly laughed. You realized something was wrong so quickly, even an idiot would know, Bruce gasped. Clearly, his state wasn't as relaxed as it once was. Seeing his parents' faces again was incredibly tempting. But Bruce was even more afraid that there was something strange about the mirror. This is the Mirror of Ares. It allows one to see the things one desires, Katoom explained. Those with weak minds tend to become addicted to it. Really? Bruce wiped the sweat from his forehead. There was something strange about the mirror. After calming down for a moment, Bruce suddenly asked, so what did you see? Me? I saw my family. Katoom felt a little sad, but he didn't hide it, hoping Bruce would comfort him. But Bruce suddenly tilted his head and asked, are you an orphan too? Otherwise, how could it be the same as what he saw? Katoom, no, can you speak? I'll never imagine that this ridiculous boomerang would actually hide him. Chapter 32 Dumbledore's Conjecture. It seems you, like thousands before you, have discovered the joys of the Mirror of Ares. Suddenly, a voice boomed from outside the doorway. It was a tall, thin, white-bearded old man, with silver hair and beard long enough to tuck into his belt. Behind half-moon glasses, a pair of piercing blue eyes shone. His nose was long and crooked, as if it had been broken at least twice. He stood in the doorway, smiling at Bruce. Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Bruce hadn't noticed how Dumbledore appeared. It seemed as if he had been there in the blink of an eye. Its apparition, a form of instantaneous teleportation, Katoom explained. "But it's forbidden in the school, students can't use it. Only the headmaster has the privilege, so that's what it was." Bruce was tempted by this ability. If he could master it, he could appear behind someone at any time, or simply disappear without a trace. He mentally asked Katoom, "When can I learn? 6th grade?" "It's still early," Katoom sighed. "I hope you learn soon, too. Once you have the power of teleportation, let's go deliver food. I can't even imagine how much money we'll make." The owl was rambling again. Bruce pulled his thoughts back and looked at the headmaster before him. Dumbledore returned to his seat and gestured for Bruce to sit down as well, to relax. Bruce sat down on a soft chair and answered Dumbledore's previous question. "Yes, headmaster, this mirror allows me to see my family." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," Dumbledore said gently. "The Mirror of Ease has a terrifying power. It allows us to see only our deepest, most pressing desires. You're lonely and longing for your family, so you see them standing around you, but Bruce, remember, this mirror can neither teach us nor tell us the truth. We can hold desires within us, but we can't dwell on them." Bruce nodded. "I understand, headmaster, so, what do you want to tell me this time?" Dumbledore waved his finger, and 2 cups of hot cocoa appeared in front of him and Bruce. Finally getting to the point, Bruce also became serious and told everything that happened in the Hufflepuff common room. Dumbledore held the hot cocoa, and as he listened, he forgot to drink it. His expression also became serious. "Bruce, what you just said is not a joke." His blue eyes looked at Bruce quietly through the half-moon lenses. "Did you really hear it?" "I heard it," Bruce nodded firmly. "It was indeed the portrait of Ms. Hufflepuff who told me in person." "Is that so?" Dumbledore muttered to himself, lost in his own thoughts. "There is no doubt that it is a prophecy, but if the prophecy is true, the meaning behind it is too terrifying. The end of Hogwarts is coming. From beginning to end, from yesterday to tomorrow, the shadows of the 3 Dark Lords will cover the entire castle." 3 Dark Lords? Dumbledore felt a headache. The 2nd Dark Lord has not been solved yet. Where did the 3rd Dark Lord come from? And there is no clue at all. I have no idea who it is. From yesterday to tomorrow is easy to understand, representing the past, present and future. But what does from the beginning to the end mean? A prophecy will not repeat the same concept twice. These 2 sentences must represent different meanings. "I'm afraid the old man is numb," Katoom said nonchalantly. "Retirement is a long way off." "Bruce," Dumbledore suddenly raised his head and looked at Bat-Boy, "do you have any thoughts on this prophecy?" Old Dumbledore was looking for more clues. Bruce was the first person to hear the prophecy and the only one who was at the scene. Maybe the portrait conveyed more information at that time, but Bruce himself did not realize it. "I have no other ideas, Mr. Headmaster." Bruce shook his head, looking harmless. "Okay then," Dumbledore sighed. "Bruce, do you mind sharing your memories of that time with me?" "Share memories?" Bruce frowned. "What does this mean?" "Don't worry, it won't hurt you. It's a little magic. If you don't want to, I won't force you." Bruce thought for a moment, then agreed. Anyway, with Katoom's brain-sealing spell, he was not worried about leaking any secrets. Dumbledore smiled with relief, leaned forward slightly across the table, and reached out to touch Bruce's temple. Then, a silver thread was pulled out of Bruce's brain and was put into a test tube by Dumbledore. "Okay, Bruce, that's it." Bruce's eyes were always fixed on the silver thread in the test tube. Was that his memory? "Bruce, thank you for coming all the way to tell me such important information, but it's late now. The little wizard should go back to the dormitory to rest." Well, since Dumbledore said so, Bruce had no reason to stay any longer. He stood up and said goodbye, walking out the door with Katoom. Then, just as Bruce reached the door, Dumbledore suddenly called him again. Bruce turned around and saw Dumbledore sitting in the shadow behind the desk. The other's blue eyes were like a pool of seawater, bottomless. "Bruce, please forgive the presumptuousness of an old man," he said. "I understand that you grew up in an orphanage. Can you tell me which orphanage it was?" "Whose orphanage?" Bruce answered naturally. "Okay." Dumbledore's expression did not change, and he waved goodbye to Bruce. "Then go back to the dormitory early." "Goodbye, Mr. Principal." Bruce said his final goodbye and left Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore was left alone, sitting silently in a chair. Suddenly, a portrait of the headmaster on the wall broke the silence. "Are you doubting that child?" These portraits had all heard the prophecy and witnessed Dumbledore's performance. They were extremely concerned about who the 3rd demon was. After all, It was related to the survival of Hogwarts. I don't know, Dumbledore murmured. I don't want to doubt Bruce, but his eyes are really similar to Tom's, not to mention, he didn't finish his words. What's more, Bruce and Voldemort came from the same orphanage. Bruce walked in the corridor without saying a word. It was not until he was far away from the headmaster's office that he felt a sense of security. Katoom, do you think there is such a possibility? Bruce said in his heart. The third demon is Dumbledore. Chapter 33 Bruce discovers a blind spot. Katoom suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, a dramatic relief. Thank you, my dear Bruce, Katoom said. I've been mentally prepared, waiting for you to say I'm the third Dark Lord. Hold on. Bruce walked towards the lounge, mentally reflecting on his speculation. Listen to my analysis. Since the prophecy already states that a third Dark Lord will appear, the rest of the prophecy must point to who that third Dark Lord will be. In my opinion, the most crucial part is the first sentence of the prophecy. From beginning to end, I've researched Dumbledore's life. The beginning of his fame was defeating the first Dark Lord. That was the beginning, and it was yesterday. Then, over a decade ago, he fought against the second Dark Lord, Voldemort. He always believed that Voldemort wasn't dead and would return. That's now, and it's today. Katoom suddenly interrupted Bruce. Wait a minute, Katoom frowned. You researched Dumbledore's life? When did you do that? How come I didn't know about it? It's not even been a week since the start of school, and you, Bruce, have already investigated the principal thoroughly. How come the Batman's true nature has been exposed so quickly? You dare to investigate the principal today, what will you dare to do tomorrow? Katoom couldn't even imagine it. Bruce gave an explanation. You investigated when you went to follow Hermione. Okay, just listen to my analysis quietly, he continued. The most crucial thing is the end and the future. Katoom, I ask you, what do you think the end is? The end is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, right? What Deathly Hallows? Bruce frowned. He really didn't need to ask Katoom this question, knowing that nothing this guy said was reliable. The end here is the destruction of Hogwarts, Bruce vowed. Don't you find it strange? Since it is the Dark Lord, it should be the nightmare of the entire wizarding world. Why did it only mention Hogwarts in the prophecy? Actually, the answer is obvious, because the Dark Lord came from Hogwarts, and it's the headmaster himself. The end of Hogwarts marks the beginning of the third generation of the Dark Lord. Bruce was unwavering in his conjecture, but Katoom shook his head. It's a bit far-fetched, the owl said. Your reasoning is so old-fashioned, it doesn't really enlighten me, Bruce sneered. You're just a bit clueless. I sensed it just now in the office. There was something wrong with the way Dumbledore looked at me, but that doesn't mean Dumbledore's the Dark Lord, does it? Katoom peeked. He wasn't siding with Dumbledore, he simply wanted to refute Bruce. Dumbledore has made so many contributions to the wizarding world throughout his life. He hasn't done anything unethical, has he? It's a disguise. An incredibly clever one, even deceiving himself, Bruce said with absolute certainty. Did you see how he took my memory just now? I now have reason to suspect he's used this method on himself, too. Dumbledore could easily have simply removed all memories of his misdeeds, retaining only those of his role as a wizarding role model. That way, no one would notice anything was amiss. Katoom felt somewhat speechless. He felt that if he left Bruce alone and allowed him to continue his analysis, he could find countless pieces of evidence against Dumbledore. That's Batman. When he suspects you, he won't offer the benefit of the doubt. He'll first find a way to beat them up. Even if he discovers he's the wrong person, Batman will only ask, why are you acting so suspiciously that I suspect you? You deserve it. Alright, let's stop here. Katoom finally didn't want to hear any more from Bruce. If you think Dumbledore is suspicious, then go investigate on your own. I have a feeling you and Rita Skeeter would have a lot in common, Bruce asked. Who is Rita Skeeter? A female reporter, Katoom casually said. She's dedicated her life to discrediting Dumbledore. You two could be soulmates. Hearing it was just a reporter, Bruce's interest instantly dropped. He was almost at the break room. By the way, you said you were going to the principal's office to look for something. Did you find it? Yes, so quickly? How did you find it? It only took so long. The Demon King has his own ways. Don't ask. Bruce soon realized Katoom hadn't taken anything out of the principal's office. He had simply memorized the passage and had been studying it obsessively ever since. After much deliberation, Bruce concluded that Katoom might have seen what he was looking for while looking into the mirror of East. There was no other explanation. Time passed slowly, and life at Hogwarts went on as usual. During this time, Dumbledore remained silent, and Bruce was unable to surmise his guilt. He handed the formula to Snape, and though Snape tried to conceal it, Bruce could still see a hint of excitement on his face. He couldn't figure out what it was about. Meanwhile, Katoom was initially enthusiastic about the recipe, but after a while, his enthusiasm began to wane. "It's ruined," Katoom complained. "I didn't expect that reversing the Horcrux creation process would still require a life." Upon hearing this, Bruce's eyes blazed. "You're going to kill?" He wouldn't tolerate such behavior. "It's none of your business whether I kill or not," Katoom mocked Bruce, then sighed. "It doesn't have to be a life, as long as it's a life of sufficient strength." Bruce finally felt relieved. Mr. Way was kind-hearted and couldn't bear to see others kill. After Katoom's enthusiasm for research faded, he refocused his energy on torturing Bruce. Halloween had arrived before he knew it. The Great Hall was already covered in vibrant, colorful decorations. 1,000 bats fluttered across the walls and ceiling, while another 1,000, like low, dark clouds, swirled above the dining table, causing the candle flames in the pumpkins to flicker. Bruce sat in the Great Hall, ready to begin his scientific meal. He glanced around and saw that Hermione was missing. "Did you overstudy again?" Bruce shook his head helplessly. All this time, Hermione had been grumbling to him about how unreliable Gryffindor boys were. They'd wander off late at night and get into trouble everywhere. It was commonplace. And most importantly, they were still so clueless, unable to even learn the simplest spells. Pack some food for Hermione later, Bruce thought, when Professor Quirrell suddenly burst into the Great Hall, his scarf askew, his face filled with fear. "The troll, in the dungeon, thought you ought to know," and with that, he sank headfirst to the floor, unconscious. Chapter 34 You will come to my office every day from now on. The Great Hall erupted in chaos. Professor Dumbledore had to make purple fireworks explode from the tip of his wand several times before everyone quieted down. "Prefect," he said in a deep voice, "take the students from all houses to their dormitories immediately." Hufflepuff's prefect, Truman, immediately stood up. "Everyone, follow me. Don't get separated, don't panic." Bruce had no intention of going his own way. He followed Truman, having long wanted to leave the Great Hall. Bats were flying overhead, a sign of bad luck. Before leaving, he packed some food to bring to Hermione later. How could a troll appear at Hogwarts? Bruce couldn't help but speculate. He glanced at Dumbledore, then shook his head. It couldn't be the headmaster's doing. But, oh no, Bruce suddenly realized, Hermione doesn't know about the troll. Hermione hadn't come to the Great Hall. If she were alone in Hogwarts, she might have encountered a troll. Bruce barely hesitated, immediately wanting to break away from the main group and go find Hermione. However, just as he turned to slip away, a calm voice suddenly called out to him. "Bruce." Turning back, he saw Dumbledore standing quietly in the distance, waving at him with a smile. Bruce, unsure of what was going on, could only go over. "Headmaster," Bruce said, approaching Dumbledore. "What's the matter, Bruce?" "Walk with me." Dumbledore, maintaining his composure, walked forward, motioning Bruce to follow. Bruce was reluctant. He was worried about Hermione and had no desire to stay with Dumbledore. "What's the matter, Bruce?" Dumbledore stopped and turned back, his half-moon glasses gleaming dimly. "Is there anything else you need to do?" "Yes," Bruce nodded decisively. "Hermione from Gryffindor House wasn't in the Great Hall just now, and she probably still doesn't know about the troll, so you wanted to leave the group because you were worried about Miss Granger." Suddenly, Dumbledore said something startling. He had seen everything. Bruce was seen trying to slip away alone amidst the chaos, his purpose unknown. Whatever the reason, it was unsafe for a young wizard to wander off in such a situation. But these words only stirred up a deep sense of insecurity in Bruce. What did he mean? He did want to leave the group, but the moment he made the slightest move, Dumbledore noticed. It was too fast. Bruce couldn't believe Dumbledore was so all-seeing, keeping an eye on every student. The only explanation was that the old man had been watching him. Bruce concluded that Dumbledore must have something to hide. Otherwise, why would he target a harmless first-year like him? Katoom, Bruce could only ask the owl. "I'm afraid I can't get away right now. Please help me find Hermione." "That's not necessary," Katoom said dazedly. The owl had been silent because the lazy fellow had been sleeping on Bruce's shoulder. Katoom, half asleep, mumbled, "Hermione'll be fine, just a little frightened at most." He knew the plot. It was just a bonding event for the three main characters, nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Dumbledore, perplexed by Bruce's lack of reaction, asked, "Bruce, is there something wrong?" "No, Headmaster, I was just worried about Hermione." Bruce wasn't lying, but since the owl said she was fine, it must be true. "If you're truly worried, we can go find Miss Granger together." Dumbledore smiled kindly. It would be my fault as headmaster to let a student be in danger. Bruce saw no reason to refuse. "Very well, Headmaster." Bruce followed Dumbledore. His expression remained impassive, as he wondered why Dumbledore had insisted on accompanying him. The more he thought about it, the more he felt Dumbledore was not a good person. Bruce followed Dumbledore, searching the study halls but finding no sign of Hermione. But neither of them showed any signs of anxiety. Bruce had received Katoom's assurance that Hermione would be fine. Dumbledore, on the other hand, always looked calm and in control. After searching everywhere for Hermione and failing to find her, he suddenly said, "Bruce, I suddenly remembered an incident." Bruce said, "What is it, Headmaster?" "That was probably 50 years ago." Dumbledore showed a look of reminiscence. "One year, Hogwarts also encountered such an incident. A monster appeared in Hogwarts and killed a female student." Bruce's body tensed up, not understanding why Dumbledore would mention such a past event. Was he threatening him? 50 years ago, Dumbledore could kill a female student, and 50 years later, he could easily kill a male student. Dumbledore continued, "As for the murderer in that incident, I roughly guessed who it was. It was a student in Hogwarts. I gave him a chance, wanting him to confess to me, but he said nothing. Then that student graduated and turned the entire wizarding world upside down. I've always regretted it. If I had acted sooner, many things might not have happened." He lowered his head, looking at Bruce with an unreadable gaze. "What do you think people do when they face the same problem again after making a wrong decision?" "I don't know, Headmaster." Bruce was now extremely nervous. If Dumbledore dared to make any wrong move, he would immediately throw the owl on his shoulder into the old man's face and run away. He couldn't defeat Dumbledore now, but that didn't mean he would just sit there and wait for death. A complex expression crossed Dumbledore's eyes. "Actually, I don't know," Dumbledore sighed. "The child has an unlimited future. We can't jump to conclusions." He raised his head, as if he had made a crucial decision. "Bruce, I've noticed your talent for a long time, and the teachers all speak highly of you," Dumbledore said softly. "I can't ignore a promising young man like you. Would you be willing to come to my office every day and learn from me?" Hearing this, the owl on Bruce's shoulder perked up. If he had heard correctly, Dumbledore was saying he wanted to take Bruce on as his last disciple? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35: The Giant's Life is Life 2. Anyone who hesitated even for a second when faced with an invitation from the legendary wizard Dumbledore would be a fool. But Bruce was different. He was repeatedly checking with Katoom. "Do you think Dumbledore has ulterior motives towards me?" Why even ask? Katoom's sleepiness had completely vanished, and this sudden development had intensified the owl's excitement. "There are so many talented students at Hogwarts, why didn't we see them? He only invited you. You're not that talented, are you?" There must be something fishy going on. Though Katoom was speaking in his own defense, Bruce couldn't help but feel something was amiss. His lips twitched in defense. "I'm actually quite talented." "That's not the point. I thought you supported Dumbledore, but I didn't expect you to think there was something wrong with him, too." "Of course Dumbledore has," Katoom raged indignantly. "I have a score to settle with him." "Bruce, what grudge could you, an owl, have against Dumbledore? Look, you were there, and yet you didn't even notice." The owl's tone was filled with resentment. "Do you remember the first time we met Dumbledore? He asked you to sit across from him and conjure 2 cups of hot cocoa." Bruce remembered that he didn't drink the hot cocoa. To maintain his health, Bruce usually only drank ginger tea. "This is Dumbledore's original sin," Katoom complained to Bruce telepathically. "I was there, and he wouldn't conjure me a cup. Dumbledore deserves death for defying me like that. What the hell?" Bruce instantly didn't want to consult Katoom again. Telepathic communication was always efficient, and by the time Bruce began to reconsider Dumbledore's invitation, only seconds had passed. "Thank you for your kindness, Headmaster, but," after thinking it over, Bruce decided to stay away from the old man, but before he could finish his words, Dumbledore interrupted him. "Don't make decisions so quickly, Bruce." Dumbledore looked at Batboy with a complicated look. "You can think about it for a few more days. I can wait for your reply at any time." This posture simply said that if Bruce did not agree, Dumbledore would wait forever. Bruce felt that this was not an invitation, but a threat. The old man had already set his sights on him. Helplessly, Bruce could only delay time. "Then I will think about it carefully. Thank you, Principal." "Old man, you wait. Give me some time. I will immediately work out a way to deal with you." Dumbledore didn't know what Bruce was thinking, and after hearing such an answer, he smiled with satisfaction. That's good, that's good." He had already made a decision in his heart. "Bruce, whether you are the Dark Lord predicted or not, I will always watch you. The dark magic world cannot have another genius wizard." At this moment, the old and the young reached a strange consensus. Then, a silver animal shadow flew from a distance. It was a cat. "Mr. Principal, please come to the women's room immediately." Professor McGonagall's voice came from the cat's shadow. "There are several students here, and they're in trouble." Bruce immediately realized who Professor McGonagall was talking about. Hermione. A few minutes ago. "Please don't be like this, Professor McGonagall. They're looking for me." Hermione stood in front of Professor McGonagall with a wronged look on her face. "I came to find the troll, because I thought I could deal with it alone, you know. Because I've read about them in books and know a lot about them." Harry and Ron stood by in amazement, unable to believe that Hermione was lying to Professor McGonagall and taking all the responsibility. At this moment, a huge, ugly creature was lying in the women's bathroom, and it had fainted. This was the troll, which was dealt with by Harry and Ron. Professor McGonagall was almost mad when she heard Hermione's answer. "Miss Granger, you silly girl, how can you think you can deal with a troll as big as a mountain by yourself?" She immediately deducted 5 points from Gryffindor, because of Hermione's recklessness. But in the blink of an eye, she added 15 points to Gryffindor, because of the bravery of the three little wizards. And told Dumbledore about this matter through the Patronus charm. After receiving the news, Dumbledore brought Bruce to the scene, but the old man did not show up, just watched in the dark. "The matter has been resolved. If the headmaster shows up again, it will make the children nervous." But Bruce didn't have this concern. He rushed directly to his cousin. At this time, Hermione was covered in dust, and the whole person was more embarrassed than ever, but she still controlled her emotions and did not show weakness. But all this changed when Bruce appeared. Sometimes, people can always remain brave and tough until she sees her relatives whom she trusts. Originally, Hermione had been crying in the girls' bathroom for an entire afternoon because she heard Ron saying bad things about her behind her back. She thought her tears had dried up, so she didn't cry out loud after the troll attack. But the moment she saw Bruce, her mouth pursed and she began to sob uncontrollably. "Bruce!" She finally burst into tears, pulled Bruce in front of her, and buried her head in his shoulder. Bruce was a little overwhelmed, not knowing how to comfort a girl. Okay, don't cry, Hermione, really, don't cry. You wiped your nose on my robes?" In any case, everything was safe now. Professor McGonagall first asked Harry and Ron to go back, and then drove away Professor Quirrell, who was crying by the pool. Finally, when Hermione calmed down a little, Bruce sent her back to Gryffindor Tower. When Bruce left the tower, Dumbledore had disappeared without a trace. Only Bruce and Katoom were left. At this time, Bruce was extremely depressed. He didn't say anything just now, but that didn't mean he wasn't angry. He spoke first. "Katoom, why don't you say anything?" The owl responded absent-mindedly, "Because I was thinking that a troll's life is also a life, and maybe it can be used to make a Horcrux." Bruce frowned. "What? Nothing? Just say whatever you want to say, I'm listening." "Okay, then I'll say it." Bruce took a deep breath. "Katoom, you know, although Hermione and I have no relationship in essence, but after nearly a year of getting along, I have regarded her as a family member. No one can hurt my family. Trolls don't appear in Hogwarts for no reason. Someone must have let them in. Katoom, you always look like you know everything, but do you know the truth of this matter?" "Who is it?" The owl was silent for a moment. Bruce's state at this time could not be faked. He was indeed extremely angry. "Bruce, I'll tell you the truth. I do know. I know everything." the owl said quietly, "but I won't tell you who it is." "Why?" Bruce turned his head suddenly, completely puzzled. Katoom remained calm. "No reason, Bruce. You have done so much thinking training and learned so many detective skills in the past year. Now you encounter a small case, can't you deduce the truth with your own ability?" Chapter 36. Quirrell also did it. November arrived, and the weather turned bitterly cold. The mountains surrounding the school were gray, covered in ice and snow, and the lake was as cold and hard as tempered steel. Every morning, frost formed on the ground. Bruce wore a black winter robe and the yellow scarf of Hufflepuff. Katoom, perched on his shoulders, also wore a small scarf. He crossed the stone bridge connecting the two towers, his breath quickly condensing into ice crystals. Quirrell obviously did it too, Bruce swore. There's no other explanation. These days, Bruce had replayed the events of Halloween over and over again, but one question remained lingering. Who let the troll in? Besides the ghost, there were only 3 people in the hall who weren't there at the time. Bruce strode forward hurriedly. Hermione, Hagrid, and Quirrell. Hermione was the victim, so Hagrid and Quirrell are the only suspects. Hagrid usually stayed in his hunting lodge, while Quirrell ran into the hall later to report the incident. Strictly speaking, neither of them had an alibi. Of course, if the poltergeist was included, there would be another suspect, Peeves. As for the house elves who had been staying in the kitchen, they were not currently under Bruce's suspicion. Bruce had been having a cordial conversation with Peeves these days, and for the sake of the Supreme Wand, Peeves tremblingly swore that he had not let the troll in. Furthermore, Peeves had also helped Bruce eliminate a suspect. Hagrid had spent Halloween deep in the Forbidden Forest, comforting the frightened magical creatures. There's been some unrest in the Forbidden Forest lately, Peeves explained. The unicorns are frightened, as if someone wants to harm them. Of course, I swear, it wasn't me. With Peeves' testimony, there was only one suspect left, Quirrell. Bruce had long disliked Quirrell. As a defense against the dark arts teacher, Quirrell's teaching ability was completely unsatisfactory. He teaches a bunch of useless stuff, Bruce had once said. After hearing these words, Katoom looked Bruce up and down, then nodded. He's truly useless. Furthermore, Quirrell always reeked of garlic, something Bruce couldn't stand. Now, finally, he had the chance to confront Quirrell. There was a Quidditch match at Hogwarts today, Gryffindor vs Slytherin. The entire school had gathered on the pitch, where Quirrell could be found. I've long suspected Quirrell might be Dumbledore's black glove, Bruce said to Katoom. Otherwise, it doesn't explain how someone like him could become the defense against the dark arts teacher. To become a teacher, one must undergo comprehensive assessments, and it was clear that Quirrell didn't meet the requirements. So why was he even hired? How had he passed Dumbledore's interview? The answer was obvious: loyalty. Quirrell's unparalleled loyalty earned Dumbledore's trust and ultimately, his stay at Hogwarts. If they can prove there's something wrong with Quirrell, then Dumbledore must be flawed too. Bruce, brimming with confidence, headed for the Quidditch pitch. Quidditch is the most popular sport in the wizarding world, but Bruce has little interest in it. After reading the rules of Quidditch, one question remained unanswered. According to the rules, hitting with a ball or pushing is not prohibited, and even 2-on-1 double teams can force a change of direction. Most importantly, even if a player is injured, another player cannot be substituted. Substitutions are only allowed if the game has lasted for several days, allowing the off-field players to take a nap. Bruce couldn't understand why the two teams didn't just fight each other after entering the field. After crippling one team, wouldn't the other team be able to score as much as they wanted? Before he knew it, Bruce arrived at a Quidditch pitch. The game had already begun, and the atmosphere was electric. The winter chill had completely dispelled the chill. It seemed as if the entire school had gathered in the stands surrounding the Quidditch pitch, with some seats even lifted high into the air. In the stands, the Gryffindor students were particularly excited because this year's first year, Harry Potter, had been made an exception and joined the Gryffindor team. Harry was a gifted player. It was said he could dive 50 feet and catch a flying ball. He was exactly what the Gryffindor team needed, as they hadn't won the championship for 4 consecutive years. This year was their most promising. Harry carried the hopes of the entire Gryffindor house on his shoulders. According to the books, Malfoy, joining next year, wouldn't have the same privilege, as Slytherin had already won the championship before he joined. Bruce stood outside the field, scanning the stands until he spotted Quirrell. He was standing next to Snape, his eyes fixed on the field, mumbling something incoherently. Suddenly, a chorus of exclamations erupted from the stands, as if something unexpected had happened. Bruce looked toward the field and saw Harry in the air, his hands gripping the broom handle tightly, his knees gripping it tightly. The broom was thrashing around, as if desperately trying to throw him off. Bruce frowned. It's a curse? Someone was casting a curse on Harry, trying to cause him an accident. The Gryffindor stands were in chaos. Every movement of Harry's broom elicited an exclamation of surprise. They could only worry, unable to do anything. It's Quirrell. Bruce immediately determined the cause. He had just seen Quirrell casting a spell, it had to be him. He hadn't expected to encounter such a situation just by checking in. Apparently, no one had noticed Quirrell's little trick. It was a change caused by Katoom's prank. According to the original storyline, Hermione suspected Snape, believing him to have cast the curse that had inadvertently saved Harry. This suspicion stemmed from Snape's previous hostility towards them. But now, that hostility was gone, and Snape's attitude towards Harry could be described as warm and welcoming. Bruce had even recently heard that Snape had discovered a special, powerful spell that he wanted to teach Harry. The only catch was that it could only be learned by girls. So, whenever Harry learned it, he had to drink a potion specially concocted by Snape, temporarily transforming into a girl. Under these circumstances, Hermione wouldn't have suspected Snape at all. Is Quirrell so bold? Bruce suddenly frowned, feeling something was wrong. He couldn't think of any reason why Quirrell would target Harry in public. Unless he was receiving orders from someone. Chapter 37, Paranoia. Katoom was fully aware of Bruce's fantasies. But he offered no advice, letting Bruce run wild. He could doubt Dumbledore if he wanted to, even if he took drastic actions, and Katoom didn't stop him. He knew it was bound to happen sooner or later. Bruce was paranoid by nature, determined to stick to his guns until he hit a wall. This character, at best, was unwavering in his resolve. At worst, it was stubbornness, a refusal to accept any advice. When Katoom asked Bruce to investigate on his own, he knew Bruce would ultimately point the finger at Dumbledore. He already had an answer in mind, and following that answer to find clues would only reinforce his own convictions. So Katoom simply let it go. Young people have to make mistakes to grow. Of course, if someone asked, what if Bruce was right? What else could he do? He was just brilliant. I'm going to stop Quirrell, Bruce said gravely. I don't think there's anything simple behind this. If we keep investigating, we'll find something big, whatever. Katoom was now very easygoing. Go ahead and do it. I'll be waiting here. You're not coming with me? Bruce asked, a little surprised. I'm not going, Katoom shook his head. Don't worry, I'll always support you. Even if you make the whole world your enemy, I'll stand firmly by your side. Bruce frowned, quite puzzled. Why would I make the whole world my enemy? Just what if? Katoom smiled playfully, not responding to Bruce's question. You're getting weirder and weirder, Bruce finally said this before slowly making his way to the stands, approaching Quirrell. He didn't rush to act, but listened intently, trying to hear the spell Quirrell was chanting. Gradually, he heard clearly. It's you, Bruce said inwardly, completely certain that Quirrell was targeting Harry. Then, he couldn't help but glance at Dumbledore, who was not far away. The teachers were all sitting on the same platform, so why couldn't Dumbledore notice Quirrell's abnormality? Damn old man, I'll settle this with you later. Bruce gathered his thoughts and focused on solving Quirrell's problem. First, he let the troll into the academy, and now he was doing evil in public. There was no reason to forgive a Quirrell anymore. Bruce crouched down and flicked his finger. Bright blue flames automatically ignited on Quirrell's robes. He immediately panicked and flapped at the flames. At that moment, Harry's broom on the field returned to normal. Bruce slowly retreated into the shadows, preparing to wait until the meeting was over so he could properly interrogate. Oh no, questioned Quirrell. And it was then that he realized something. My identity as a student seems a bit inconvenient. Even if Quirrell acted timid, it would be difficult for him to be scared by a student, right? Bruce held his chin in his hand, thinking slowly. Then he began to understand why his future self had an identity in the dark. There are some things Bruce Wayne simply isn't suited to do. In the Gryffindor stands, the crowd's confidence returned. High in the air, Harry climbed back onto his broom. He dove rapidly toward the ground, and then everyone saw him cover his mouth with his hands, as if about to vomit. A golden object fell into his palm, the golden snitch. I caught the snitch, Harry shouted, waving the ball high above his head. The Gryffindor crowd erupted in cheers. "Brilliant, Harry!" Hermione leaned out of the stands and waved vigorously. Then, suddenly, she heard the hoot of an owl. "Cuckoo, Katoom!" Hermione turned and saw Katoom had unknowingly arrived at her side. "Why are you here?" "Is Bruce here?" She scooped Katoom up and held it above her head, like a mascot, celebrating Gryffindor's victory. Cuckoo! Katoom was tossed back and forth in Hermione's hands, feeling dizzy. "I was careless. I shouldn't have come. You and Bruce seem to be constantly at odds lately." Hermione carried Katoom in her arms as they followed the crowd away from the field. Acting like a sister, she addressed Katoom. "Is Bruce always bullying you? Tell me, and I'll teach him a lesson." Katoom said nothing. What could he say? Even if he did, Hermione wouldn't understand. Coo, the owl hooted twice, then settled on Hermione's shoulder, eyes closed, and a look of complete indifference. Bruce was already a bit distraught, and Katoom planned to stay away from him for a few days. Until Bruce came up with his own answer. A few days later, Katoom finally flew back to Bruce. "How's it going, Bat Boy?" the owl said, as if they had been reunited after a long separation. "Did you find the answer?" "No," Bruce said indignantly. "I'm so unlucky. I didn't get a chance to be alone with Quirrell." He then recounted the events of the past few days. After the Quidditch match, Bruce didn't catch Quirrell because Snape had pulled him away. Bruce didn't lose heart, thinking he'd find another chance. But the next day, Quirrell took a leave of absence, even temporarily having Snape cover for defense against the dark arts. This was something that wouldn't have happened otherwise, but now it did. It was said that Quirrell's leave was until after Christmas. Did he discover something? Bruce asked suspiciously. Or did Dumbledore discover something? Katoom was finally speechless. He couldn't help but speak up. "Bruce, why don't we take our eyes off Dumbledore? Quirrell's little tricks would be easy to expose if they weren't focused on Dumbledore." "Why?" Bruce asked. "I think Dumbledore is the biggest suspect." "Okay, whatever." Katoom didn't insist. Seeing that he couldn't persuade Bruce, he just let him go. After all, everything would be decided after Christmas. Bruce would know whether it was right or wrong. "Get ready, Christmas is coming soon," Katoom reminded him. "You're going back to the Grangers with Hermione." Hearing this, Bruce stopped caring about Dumbledore. He'd always spent Christmases with Alfred in the empty Wayne Manor. The loneliness was indescribable. This year, things could finally be different. With this anticipation, Bruce's attitude softened, becoming less confrontational. "Katoom, do you really think I'm wrong?" "I don't know, but," Katoom said, suddenly pulling a crown from his feathers. "If you have any doubts, try reasoning with this crown again. It will enhance your wisdom. I've already dealt with the dark magic on it these past few days, so don't worry." Katoom hadn't been idle during the few days he'd been with Hermione. Bruce looked at the severely rusted crown, a woman's style, and was quite disgusted. "I won't wear it, it's a girl's thing." Bruce refused. "You wear it yourself." "I won't wear it either." Katoom's reason was even more firm. "I'm already smart enough, I don't need this thing." Chapter 38 The Last Calm of Christmas. Christmas is approaching. On the eve of the holiday, Hogwarts School awoke to find itself blanketed in several feet of snow and the lake frozen solid. The Great Hall was already decorated for Christmas. The walls were draped with streamers of holly and mistletoe, and 12 towering Christmas trees stood around, some adorned with glittering icicles, others gleaming with hundreds of candles. Hermione, wrapped in a scarf, entered the Great Hall. Harry and Ron were playing wizard's chess. "Don't get carried away. While I'm gone, remember to keep searching for information on Nicholas Flamel," Hermione warned before leaving Hogwarts. "Send an owl to let me know if you find anything." "Are you leaving now?" Ron glanced behind Hermione. "You haven't packed your bags yet." "I've packed them, but I don't have them with me," Hermione said. "Someone will help me get them on the train." Bruce, dragging his 2 suitcases, entered the compartment of the Hogwarts train. Outside the car window was a vast expanse of white, a completely different view from the way they'd arrived. Hermione quickly found him and sat across from him. As soon as she sat down, she pulled Katoom over to her side. Bruce noticed something was wrong. "Why do you look a little worried?" "It's about school," Hermione sighed. "We recently discovered someone might be trying to harm Hogwarts." "Who?" Bruce asked casually. "Professor Quirrell." Bruce sat up straight immediately. "Tell me more." "It happened before Halloween." Hermione had nothing to hide, so she told Bruce everything about Harry and Malfoy's midnight duel before Halloween. and the discovery of a three-headed dog guarding the trapdoor. Harry said the three-headed dog might be guarding something Hagrid took out of Gringotts. You should remember the news about the attack on Gringotts. Bruce nodded. Of course he remembered. But he was a little confused. What does this have to do with Quirrell? Because Harry saw it, Hermione explained. Harry saw Snape warning Quirrell on the day of the Quidditch match. Harry thought Snape was a good guy, so Quirrell, who was warned by Snape, must be a bad guy, just for this reason? Bruce was a little disappointed. He had thought he could hear some new clues. Hermione continued, then we learned from Hagrid that the thing guarded by the three-headed dog was the secret between Dumbledore and a man named Nicholas Flamel. Now we are looking for who Nicholas Flamel is. He is very mysterious, an alchemist, Bruce suddenly said. Haven't you read the book Ancient History of Magic? Nicholas Flamel is introduced in the book. And he took out a magic picture from his pocket. On it was the unforgivable dark wizard Dumbledore. The back of the card recorded Dumbledore's major achievements, his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, his discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his remarkable achievements in alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Hermione leaped up, so excited she flung Katoom away. She remembered. Why didn't I remember that before? Hermione exclaimed excitedly. Nicholas Flamel is the only known creator of the Philosopher's Stone. She turned to get off the train and tell her friends about her discovery. But just then, the train whistled and slowly started to move. Go back and send an owl, Bruce said calmly. Or maybe wait until we get back to school. Have a good Christmas, he said this, but his heart was filled with turmoil. Great. He had finally found the truth. Dumbledore's target was the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone was a magical substance with astonishing powers. It could transform any metal into pure gold and create an elixir of life, granting immortality to those who drank it. Dumbledore was already very old, and Bruce could understand his desire for immortality. But the Philosopher's Stone belonged to Nicholas Flamel. To maintain his image of detachment and indifference to life and death, Dumbledore could leave the stone at school, but he couldn't take it for himself. So what was he to do? Why not let Quirrell do it? That way, the theft of the Philosopher's Stone would be Quirrell's fault, and Dumbledore had nothing to do with it. Bruce held his excited hands, already knowing what he would do. After returning to school for Christmas, he would quietly wait for Quirrell to make his move, then catch him in the act. While his heart was pounding, Katoomba couldn't help but cover his forehead with his wing. It was over. Batboy's logic had made sense. At this moment, the man and the bird were each lost in their own thoughts, neither paying attention to the picture in Bruce's hand. Dumbledore in the picture listened quietly to Hermione and Bruce's entire conversation. Then he turned and left the picture. The train whirred and soon arrived at 9 3/4 station. When Bruce and Hermione stepped off the platform, the Grangers were already waiting there, beaming with smiles. Mom, Hermione rushed over. Meanwhile, in an ordinary house in London, the air was steaming. In the middle of the room, a pot stood on a shelf, stewing a hearty meal. Eat, 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 the dark wizard Gibern, clutching the soup ladle, scooped himself a full bowl of stew. Then someone swore, leave some for me. Sitting next to the pot were two people, Jason and Lupin. They were part of the Unwelcome League. With Christmas approaching, the trio had temporarily put their evil plans on hold, preparing to enjoy the holiday in peace. Lupin, holding the hot stew, felt a sense of gratitude. In previous Christmases, he'd just bought some bread and dried ham and walked away. But this year was different. He could enjoy such a sumptuous meal. It was all thanks to Jason, who was able to secure the money that improved Lupin's life. But where did this money come from? That's enough. Don't ask questions you shouldn't ask. Lupin was still sighing when suddenly, someone knocked on their door. Jason immediately drew the double pistols from his waist. Excuse me. The locked door suddenly opened, and a strangely large-headed figure walked in. When he entered the room, Jason realized that the man's head wasn't big, but was covered in turbans. Hello, the man said with a smile. My name is Quirrell, and I'm a professor at Hogwarts. I've heard of your names for a long time, but unfortunately I've never had the chance to meet you. Jason's finger was already on the trigger. Oh? Why do you want to meet us? Because I know you're working on something big, and I'm very interested in it. Quirrell was now completely free of the stuttering and timid look he had at school. I sincerely want to work with you, Jason sneered. What can you do? There are many things I can do, Quirrell said. For example, I can open the gates of Hogwarts for you. For a moment, the room fell silent. Jason was silent for a moment, then looked up and pointed at the stew pot. Would you like a bowl? Chapter 39 Batman Begins. Christmas flew by. Bruce returned to Hogwarts, a place he hadn't visited for a long time. This time, he had a few extra things in his luggage. What do you think of this? In the dorm, Bruce showed Katoom a design. It showed a black suit, the classic Batman look. Katoom became interested. Did you draw this? Bruce nodded. Ever since the last Quidditch match, I've noticed that some things aren't meant to be done publicly. And since you said I'd become Batman, and I agree with that role, designing a suit is only natural. Katoom examined the design carefully. It was indeed a perfect match. Bruce's design was a true replica of Batman's classic look. Owl had once thought Bruce's first design would be the original Batsuit, the 1939 version. A unique feature of the original Batsuit was that the ears on the hood weren't on top of the head, but on the sides. In other words, the earliest Batman had a bare, semicircular head flanked by a pair of pointed ears. It looked a bit funny. This strange image was quickly refined and transformed into the now famous classic. Bruce's design was now complete, and Batman had arrived. Katoom had no objections, the design was fine. Then he asked, "So, you want to make your own suit?" "No need to bother." Bruce shook his head, pulled out the black fabric he'd prepared from his luggage, and tossed it into the air. The fabric began to weave and stitch itself together. Soon, a complete suit was in Bruce's hands. The suit fit him perfectly, and Bruce didn't feel tight after putting it on. Not bad. Now, before Katoom, Bruce had officially become Batman, but there was one small problem. With the height of an 11-year-old in the Batsuit, Bruce looked a bit like a kid trick-or-treating on Halloween. I said it wasn't bad, so no one would know who I was. Bruce spun around in front of a floor-length mirror, taking in his new look, his satisfaction growing. Very handsome. From now on, I am Batman. Bruce suddenly lowered his voice deep. Any crime will be brought to justice. But then, Katoom suddenly asked, "Are you truly ready?" Bruce was stunned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Katoom shook his head. "You'll have to take this step sooner or later. As for the price of donning the cape, you'll learn it yourself." For the next few days, Bruce put away his suit, pretending nothing had happened. He remained a good student at Hogwarts, no one knowing he was planning to kill the headmaster. Bruce waited, waiting for Dumbledore to reveal his true colors. Unbeknownst to him, Dumbledore was waiting too. The two of them kept their secrets until something unexpected shattered the tranquility of Hogwarts. In the Hogwarts hunting grounds, a ragged man suddenly burst into Hagrid's hut. "Help!" he cried, his hair disheveled and his face dusty. "Let me into the castle, let me see Dumbledore. I have something important to tell you. Hurry, or it'll be too late." Hagrid quickly recognized the man's identity. "Remus." Hagrid was shocked. "How did you become like this?" His impression of Lupin was still stuck on his time in the Order of the Phoenix 10 years ago. Hagrid had heard that Lupin's life was not easy, but he had never imagined it would be so miserable. "It's too late, too late." Lupin burst into tears and continued to confess. "I'm sorry, Dumbledore. I did something wrong. I helped them find those things." With that, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. It seemed that the escape had drained all his strength. The last thing he heard was Hagrid's panicked cry, "Remus!" A few minutes later, Dumbledore arrived at the hunting lodge. He examined the unconscious Lupin and shook his head. "He seems to have suffered some kind of attack, not fatal, but crucial." Dumbledore gently smoothed Lupin's tangled hair. "His memory is distorted. He only knows there's something he wants to let me know, but his memory of what it is has been erased." Hagrid, listening nearby, trembled with fear. He had a premonition that something big was about to happen. Perhaps today. "Hagrid, please keep today's events a secret. For the time being, I'll be grateful for your care of Remus." Dumbledore rose from the bed and slowly walked to the door. "I'm leaving Hogwarts for the next few days." "Huh?" Hagrid was puzzled. Wasn't the situation critical right now? How could Dumbledore, the pillar of Hogwarts, leave? But the question remained unanswered. Dumbledore left the hunting lodge, sighing softly. There was something he hadn't told Hagrid. In Lupin's memory, he had seen a young man. He always wore a leather jacket, with twin pistols slung at his waist. It was Jason, the founder of the Unwelcome League. Jason kept mentioning a name, whether intentionally or not. Bruce Wayne. I didn't expect there was a connection between these two. Dumbledore looked up, remembering the scene he had seen through the picture. Bruce knew about the existence of the Philosopher's Stone and its location. Bruce's behavior at that time was very strange. He was too calm, as if he had no interest in the Philosopher's Stone at all. This was not the reaction of an 11-year-old. This made Dumbledore suspect that Bruce wanted the Philosopher's Stone. In that case, I will create an opportunity for you. Dumbledore slowly walked forward, and in the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared, never to be seen again. I heard that Dumbledore left the school. Bruce jumped out of bed and said to Katoom with confidence, "I'm sure he's started." Huh? Katoom was so sleepy that he didn't understand what Bruce was saying. Dumbledore left the school to avoid suspicion, Bruce analyzed confidently, and then Quirrell will take action and steal the Philosopher's Stone. That way, no one will ever suspect Dumbledore. What a great plan. Bruce secretly admired in his heart, thank goodness Hogwarts has him, who saw through Dumbledore's conspiracy at a glance. As expected of me. Bruce grabbed the owl with one hand and picked up the Batman suit with the other. Tonight, he would catch Quirrell in the act. That's sick. Katoom was getting more and more unhappy as he was being carried all the way. Bruce was not only paranoid now, but also reckless. He lacked even basic respect for himself, carrying him around like a pet. If you have the guts to face Voldemort later, don't ask me for help. Chapter 40 The Meaning of the Godfather. I admire your perseverance, but have you considered one thing? Katoom struggled to roll over, landing back on Bruce's shoulder. Your previous reasoning was all based on the assumption that Dumbledore was a villain. What if he wasn't? I think the evidence is clear, Bruce said. Have you considered the most crucial point? If he's the Dark Lord who can destroy Hogwarts, he must be more powerful than Headmaster Dumbledore, right? Is there anyone more powerful than Dumbledore in the wizarding world today? If he hadn't known the plot, Katoom might have been convinced. So he decided to change his perspective. Securing the Philosopher's Stone presents numerous challenges. Do you have any solutions? For example, what about that giant three-headed dog? Don't worry about that. Bruce's eyes lit up with unprecedented confidence. Quirrell will help me, and since he had already decided to act, he was naturally prepared. With that, Bruce donned his Batman mask. Seconds later, he was outside the fourth-floor corridor. The door was already ajar. Well, see you, Bruce whispered. Quirrell's ear. He gently pushed the door open. As it creaked open, a loud snore echoed from the room, accompanied by the melodious sound of a harp. Bruce entered the room and saw the three-headed dog fast asleep, a self-playing harp beside him. At the three-headed dog's feet, an open trapdoor sat open. Now, I'll trouble you, Bruce said, turning to Katoom. Katoom suddenly had a bad feeling. Sure enough, the next moment, Bruce grabbed him and threw him into the trapdoor. How is it going? Bruce asked, crouching over the trapdoor. Is it deep down there? Come down. Katoom's voice was a little weak. It's a soft landing down there. Bruce felt relieved. He jumped from the trapdoor and landed on a thick layer of vines. Devil's Snare. Bruce immediately recognized a plant and thought of a solution. Before the Devil's Snare could wrap around him, Bruce cast a spell. A bluebell-like flame ignited, consuming the snare completely. Let's go, Bruce said to Katoom, and entered the stone corridor. To protect the Philosopher's Stone, each teacher had set a checkpoint. Hagrid's three-headed dog, Professor Sprout's Devil's Snare, Professor Flitwick's Flying Key, Professor McGonagall's Giant Chessboard, Quirrell's Troll, and Professor Snape's Potion of Life and Death. Each level was challenging and offered endless surprises to the intruder. But for Bruce now, these were no problem. The room Bruce entered next was filled with winged keys, only one of which could lead to the next level. Bruce's answer to this question was also simple. Petrify all. With a single spell, all the keys froze in place. Bruce climbed onto the nearby broomstick and easily retrieved the correct key. After passing this level, he arrived at the giant chessboard. This wasn't a difficult task for Bruce. If Ron could win, so could he. After that level, there was a troll level set by Quirrell. However, Quirrell had already solved it. The troll lay motionless on the floor in front of him, unconscious, with a large, bloody lump on its head. Bruce walked past a troll. The next level, a magical flame blocked his path. To pass the flame, he needed to solve a mental puzzle and drink the correct potion. This logic puzzle might be difficult for a wizard, but for Bruce, it was a piece of cake. After passing through numerous levels, Bruce finally reached the final room. In the center of the room, a huge magic mirror stood. It was the mirror of a priest. Standing before it was someone. As Bruce had expected, it was Quirrell. Quirrell, Bruce, dressed in his Batman costume, slowly stepped forward. Your days of doing evil for Dumbledore are over. Give me the Philosopher's Stone. Quirrell slowly turned around and saw a strangely dressed figure standing before him. He frowned. Bruce Wayne, huh? Bruce was stunned. How did you recognize me? Wasn't he disguised? Because of that owl. Quirrell pointed at Bruce's shoulder naturally. Have you been with it for too long and automatically ignored its existence? Bruce turned to look at Katoom with an expressionless face. What does it have to do with me? Katoom felt very wronged. How about I wear a mask next time? Okay, stop talking nonsense. Bruce waved his hand and said in a deep voice, Quirrell, give me the Philosopher's Stone. You want this? Hearing this, Quirrell slowly raised his hand, and at his fingertips, a dark red crystal gleamed. Katoom's brows suddenly sank. Why did Quirrell get the Philosopher's Stone? Dumbledore thought he had set up such powerful protection. Quirrell sneered. Only the person who hopes to find the Philosopher's Stone, but does not use it, can get it from the mirror. How interesting. If I didn't already have something better, I might not be able to get it. What did you say? Bruce was suddenly confused. What is Dumbledore's protection? Aren't Quirrell and Dumbledore on the same side? Stupid, Katoom suddenly sighed. The owl had imagined this scene many times. He had always thought that when Bruce found out he was wrong, he would laugh at him. But now that it really happened, Katoom was in no mood to laugh at Bruce. Because Bruce himself was in great self-doubt. Dumbledore is a good man, Bruce muttered in disbelief. But my reasoning shouldn't be wrong, because you weren't reasoning before, you were proving, Katoom said. Every clue you found was to prove your own conclusion. That's the downside of being too paranoid. It's okay, Bruce. Just don't make that mistake again, Katoom finished, looking at Quirrell. If nothing unexpected happened, the change in this guy was caused by Jason, right? It seemed that this time, little Bruce couldn't survive this crisis alone. Why are you suddenly silent? Quirrell said to Bruce with a sneer. You're quite cautious. You cast 17 protective spells on yourself. For the time being, I really can't do anything to you, but it doesn't matter. You weren't my target in the first place. Someone will naturally deal with you later. My real target is Dumbledore. Today, he must die. With that, Quirrell lightly flicked his finger, and the Philosopher's Stone in his fingertips shattered into countless fragments. I don't need this anymore. With those words, he apparated from the room. Simultaneously, the entrance began to close, as if possessed by life. Bruce was completely trapped underground. Katoom. Bruce suddenly crouched on the ground, curled up in his arms, his head lowered, not wanting the owl to see his tears. His confidence was completely shattered. Am I useless? His voice trembled, a tearful tinge on his lips. I thought my reasoning was sound, and I was well prepared to easily obtain the Philosopher's Stone. He even donned the Batman suit, looking like a complete clown. Don't say that. It's not true. Katoom landed on Bruce's shoulder again and patted his head. You're still young? It's inevitable you'll make mistakes, but it doesn't matter. I'm just watching you make them on purpose. Bruce slowly raised his head, puzzled. Because only in this way can you truly grow into Batman. Katoom confidently tossed the feathers on his head. Relax, it's just a setback. With your Owl Godfather here, I'll cover you no matter what crisis. Chapter 41 The Real Demon King. Dumbledore apparated, reappearing on the stone bridge outside Hogwarts Castle. Bruce went in after all. His heart was heavy. A gifted child, yet he had strayed from the right path. Quirrell aside, Bruce also had his sights set on the Philosopher's Stone. Dumbledore was utterly disappointed, determined. With Tom's experience as a lesson, Hogwarts couldn't afford another Dark Lord. Bruce, I gave you a chance, he murmured, preparing to enter Hogwarts. He had apparated there to give himself some mental pause. However, Dumbledore had only taken a few steps when he spotted two figures standing outside the Hogwarts gates, quietly awaiting his arrival. These were the two he had seen in Lupin's memories, Jason Todd and the Dark Wizard Gibbon. Jason, smiling, a muggle, stood before the legendary wizard Dumbledore without hesitation. You too, Dumbledore said gently. Hogwarts didn't invite you, did it? Indeed, we haven't. We've come uninvited. Jason stepped forward. Remus has escaped here, hasn't he? Hand him over. He's a dear friend of mine, and I don't want him to be involved in the ensuing battle. Affected? Dumbledore smiled. He knew that while Jason was a skilled marksman, he had no magical talent, and 1 or 2 bullets wouldn't hurt him at all. In other words, their fight would probably be over in seconds. Mr. Todd, Dumbledore said, I think you may have misunderstood something. Remus is my student, and Hogwarts is his home. Dumbledore, don't be so pretentious. I know you think I'm weak and unworthy of speaking to you from a position of strength, Jason shrugged. But I admit that I might not be able to defeat you on my own. Dumbledore glanced at Gibbon beside Jason. Did Jason think that adding this dark wizard would be enough? Don't look at him. Jason kicked Gibbon away. He has nothing to do with it. He tapped his ear, and a red metal hood automatically covered his face. I know you're probably a good person, but I'm sorry, I have my own beliefs. The red hood took the initiative and walked towards Dumbledore. There are 3 reasons I have to take action against you, Jason spoke slowly, and Dumbledore listened quietly. Dumbledore never minded talking to a non-threatening opponent. First, your existence has made Remus confused, and he has always been afraid to lower his boundaries and pursue his own happiness. Second, the professors at your school told me that you killed your sister with your own hands for your so-called career. Third, Jason paused for a moment before revealing his greatest grudge against Dumbledore. Third, Hogwarts, with you as headmaster, has made Bruce Wayne feel at home. Jason's eyes grew colder. I will destroy everything Bruce holds dear. Dumbledore's expression remained unchanged, his faint smile still. Is that so, Mr. Todd? He said. But I won't stand by and watch you destroy my school. I know. Jason looked up and held up 2 fingers. He held a test tube, a green liquid flowing from it. So, let them do it, inside the Philosopher's Stone room. Then, let's reason again. After comforting the lost Bat-Boy, Katoom regained his spirits. As a godfather, he had to shoulder his responsibilities. He pulled a crown from the feathers and placed it on his head. The only thing I can't figure out right now is what did Quirrell get from Jason? As the crown was placed on his head, Katoom's thoughts suddenly became clear. And many clues he had previously overlooked came back to his attention. Then, the owl's face grew serious. I understand, he sighed. Quirrell, as Voldemort's parasite, originally wanted to find the Philosopher's Stone in order to resurrect Voldemort. There's only one reason why he doesn't need the Philosopher's Stone now. He's gained something better. He's no longer obsessed with the Philosopher's Stone, so of course he can get it from the magic mirror. What could be better than the Philosopher's Stone, and have something to do with DC? With that, the owl looked up at Bruce, who was still in a state of confusion. Little Bat, you'll have to watch me carefully from now on. Jason came to this world from DC, bringing metal with him. Outside the Hogwarts gates, Dumbledore watched as Jason produced a test tube, raised it above his head, and then nothing else happened. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Mr. Todd, Dumbledore smiled. I'm busy right now, I know. Wait a moment. Jason, a little annoyed, turned and yelled at Gibbon. Are you ready? You're taking so long. Almost there, Gibbon replied timidly, wand raised. He had just recently had his powers restored by Quirrell, and using magic again was a bit unaccustomed. Then, just as Gibbon finished speaking, the ground between Jason and Dumbledore suddenly began to tremble. A black, decaying wooden chest slowly rose from the ground. Dumbledore frowned. For some reason, he felt an unprecedented pressure from the wooden box. And, rather than a chest, it looked more like a coffin. We've been searching for nearly a year, and we haven't found everything yet. But that's okay. 3 are enough. Jason opened the test tube, and a drop of green liquid automatically flew out, merging into the coffin. I always thought this guy would be the hardest to find, but surprisingly, he's the first one we found. It's mainly thanks to me stealing the notebook and finding his retreat in his later years. Dumbledore's heart began to race. He had already guessed what Jason was looking for. The smile on his face just now was gone. He couldn't smile anymore. The black wooden coffin began to vibrate, as if something was trying to escape from within. Dumbledore flipped his palm, and the Elder Wand appeared in his hand. Crack, the black wooden coffin slowly opened, and endless black air surged out of the coffin. A skeletal figure in tattered robes walked out from it. The skeletal wizard supported himself with a snake-shaped scepter, and each step he took was extremely slow. His skeleton was scattered and was slowly gathering together. 2 balls of soul fire ignited in his dark eye sockets. Who are you? The skeletal wizard suddenly raised his head and looked at Dumbledore. He opened his mouth and his jaw fell off. Albus Dumbledore, the current headmaster of Hogwarts. Dumbledore answered the question in the most solemn manner. Hogwarts has a headmaster? Then you should have heard of my name. The skeletal wizard reached out and put his dislocated jaw back in place, and the bones rubbed against each other, making a creaking sound. You can call me Salazar Slytherin. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Hogwarts Collapse Plan. Salazar Slytherin. With a man's personal admission, Dumbledore's heart finally settled. He stared at Jason behind Salazar, his rage unspeakable. No wonder Lupin had confessed to him. Disturbing the slumber of Hogwarts founder was such a blasphemy. Surprised, Jason said. With only a degraded Dionysus factor in a dark ritual, I can use your school's founder. He then deliberately showed Dumbledore the tube of green liquid in his hand. Dionysus factor, a liquid metal in the DC universe, grants immortality and the ability to constantly regenerate. Destroying Hogwarts? Easy as pie. By this time, Salazar had gradually adjusted to the feeling of returning to the human world. He stretched out his hand and waited a moment, but there was no response. The feeling of emptiness in his hand filled him with dissatisfaction. Where's my wand? Jason didn't know the answer to this question. It was the dark wizard Gibbon, lying prostrate on the ground, who answered. Master Slytherin, your snakewood staff was taken to America by descendants and buried outside Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, America, Salazar sneered. Another small nation that broke away from the Holy Roman Empire? Never mind, I'll get it myself later. He turned to look at Dumbledore, who stood ready. You're lucky. You've got a few more minutes to live against a wandless me, Salazar said calmly. By the way, current headmaster of Hogwarts, are you a pureblood or a half-blood? What's the difference between pureblood and half-blood? Dumbledore didn't want to engage in further conversation with Slytherin. Such undead creatures, resurrected through blasphemous means, deserved to return to their graves, no matter how special their lives had been. He pressed his fingertips to the tip of the Elder Wand and slowly pulled them apart. A flame blazed like a thread, instantly spreading across the entire stone bridge, enveloping everyone present in a wall of flame. Dumbledore waved his wand, and the wall of fire began to stir. Flames continuously burst forth, swirling across the sky like backward flying meteors. Gradually, the meteors formed a vast vortex, like an inverted city of fire, threatening to strangle the trapped darkness. It's the god of fire, Gibbon exclaimed. This was Dumbledore's specialty, the nightmare of the Death Eaters. The god of fire? It's clearly the Gulliver's fire, Salazar sneered. Has the wizarding world fallen to this point now? They can't even recognize spells. Gulliver's fire, also known as the Eternal Flame, is an inextinguishable flame. Even in ancient times, it was an extremely powerful spell. However, for Salazar Slytherin, this power was not invincible. His skeletal form, at first glance, resembled a candle in the wind, but the magic within it was unfathomable. Salazar had no wand, so he cast a spell without a wand. He extended his hand and reached into the turbulent wall of fire. Call upon fiend fire, boom, with the words uttered, the golden red flames, like dye, instantly transformed into deep emerald fiend fire. The wall of fire crumbled, and fiend fire, like mercury pouring down from the earth, surged towards Dumbledore like a cascade of earth and sky. Simultaneously, within the fiend fire, countless dark creatures, born from the flames, emerged, dementors, trolls, werewolves, octopus spiders. These fiend fire creatures, gnashing their teeth and sucking blood, devoured the prey. Dumbledore became his sole target. Do you see the difference between you and me, Dumbledore? Salazar said coldly. You are but a mortal born in an age without me. Dumbledore's forehead was already covered in sweat. Salazar's power was far beyond his imagination. The other party's casual use was of long-lost ancient magic. Fiend fire had already leaped before Dumbledore. Expecto Patronus, Dumbledore, holding the Elder Wand upside down, thrust it into the ground. With a resounding cry, a massive phoenix appeared, enveloping Dumbledore. The fiend fire roared, but could not penetrate even a fraction. The phoenix spread its wings and sang, its cry stirring. The emerald green fiend fire was forcibly dispelled, and the fiend fire creatures were annihilated. The Patronus gradually faded, and Dumbledore's breathing became heavier. The first clash between the two legendary wizards ended in a battle that neither gained. Jason frowned. That's it, Muggles, be polite, Salazar said grimly. Don't think a single imperious ritual guarantees your absolute safety. Jason raised his hands, indicating no offense. I apologize, Archmage, but I simply find the current efficiency too low, he said. I simply don't have the patience to wait for you and Dumbledore to decide the outcome, a quick and decisive battle. Salazar sneered, but without further argument, he waved his hand toward Dumbledore. Avada Kedavra, a blinding green light blazed, accompanied by a chaotic cacophony of voices, as if an invisible death were hurtling toward Dumbledore. This was unlike any killing curse Dumbledore had ever seen before. Its power was far greater than he had imagined, and the surging green light was like a torrent of souls. Dumbledore could not withstand it. He turned, his robes swirling, and disappeared. He reappeared only after the killing curse ended. Having escaped a fatal catastrophe, Dumbledore felt no relief. The ground began to shake again, and two new coffins rose from behind Salazar. Depicted on them were images of eagles and badgers. It was over. At that moment, Dumbledore felt a surge of despair. Jason repeated his old trick, opening the test tube, and 2 drops of Dionysus factor flew into the coffin. The new coffin opened, and the same black air swirled, and 2 figures emerged from within. One of them had a slender frame, yet even after millennia of bleached bones, she still retained the grace and elegance of life. Clad in blue robes, she gently waved her hand, dispelling the dark aura before her, her tone tinged with contempt and mockery. Hogwarts, you are defiled. Rowena Ravenclaw, one of the 4 founders, had returned to the world of the living. The other, shorter than Rowena and more robust, wore a pale yellow robe that hung loosely around her. Though resurrected, the soul fire in her eyes held a hint of bewilderment, as if she couldn't understand how she had become like this. Helga Hufflepuff, one of the 4 founders, had returned. I'm sorry, Dumbledore, Jason shrugged. I simply can't find Gryffindor's remains, otherwise I would have reunited you. Dumbledore's hand gripped the Elder Wand, crackling. This careless treatment of the dead thoroughly crossed his line. But now wasn't the time to settle accounts with Jason, for he faced an unprecedented crisis. An overwhelming sense of oppression washed over Dumbledore. Gazing at the 3 founders, Dumbledore suddenly remembered the prophecy. From beginning to end, from yesterday to tomorrow, the shadows of the 3 Dark Lords would loom over the entire castle. So that's what it meant, Dumbledore said with a wry smile, as he gradually understood everything. He had wrongly blamed Bruce. Chapter 43 The Strongest. By now, the battle on the stone bridge had alerted the faculty and students within Hogwarts. Deputy Headmistress McGonagall quickly summoned all students to their dormitories and led the faculty to the main gates. They had hoped that by gathering together, they could offer even a small helping hand to Dumbledore. But a cry of alarm from the Ravenclaw ghost, Lady Grey, completely shattered their confidence. Mother, Lady Grey, or rather, Rowena Ravenclaw's daughter, Helena Ravenclaw, desperately attempted to break through the castle gates. The Bloody Baron stopped her. Professors, you can't leave now. The Bloody Baron, emaciated and covered in silver blood, grabbed Helena, his expression awestruck. One of the 3 wizards facing Dumbledore is Rowena Ravenclaw herself. His words resonated like thunder among the professors. If one of the 3 wizards Dumbledore faced was Rowena Ravenclaw, the identities of the other 2 skeletal wizards were easy to guess. 3 of the 4 founders of Hogwarts have returned to the human world. While it's unknown what happened to them, there's no doubt they're now Hogwarts enemies. Professor McGonagall made an immediate decision. Don't leave yet. Stay put. She saw clearly that a battle of this magnitude was beyond the reach of professors like them. Rushing in would not only be useless, but would easily be caught in the aftermath, distracting Dumbledore. But, can Dumbledore win? Professor Flitwick spoke up. A dueling champion in his youth, he possessed a deep understanding of combat. Dumbledore was certainly powerful, but against 3 of them, all legendary wizards of ancient times, Flitwick saw no chance of success. He will win, Professor McGonagall said, almost without hesitation, as if answering Professor Flitwick's question, but also trying to convince herself. Dumbledore is the strongest, in the Hall of the Mirror of East. All scenarios have been deduced. Katoom let out a long sigh, removed the crown of wisdom from his head, and tucked it back into his feathers. If Jason really had come to this world with the Dionysus factor, he would definitely find a way to find the remains of powerful wizards from the past. No doubt, I would do the same. And Jason has always targeted you. Since you are at Hogwarts, it's obvious whose remains he will look for. Bruce had wiped the tears from his face and pulled himself together. He naturally understood what Katoom meant by that. Then what should we do? Bruce asked anxiously. With the 4 founders resurrected, Hogwarts can't stop them. How could Jason possibly find 4 remains? Katoom sneered, then asked Bruce, you said before that we should have a backup plan before taking action. Did you make a backup plan for this situation? Bruce shook his head, a little afraid to look the owl in the eye. How could the contingency plan be done to this extent? But Katoom didn't mean to blame him at all. Instead he said, didn't do it right? It's okay, I did it. Bruce widened his eyes, a little bit unable to believe what the owl said. Can the backup plan really go to this extent? I said before, I look forward to Jason bringing a little Gotham shock to Hogwarts. I dare to say such a thing. Naturally I have my own confidence. The owl raised its head and estimated the time. Dumbledore and the opposite side should have started fighting now. The 3 founders, Jason, plus Quirrell. 5 people. Katoom nodded. I originally planned to prepare only 4 people, but judging from the current situation, we also have 5. Bruce couldn't help asking, where did you get the 5 people? Boom. Dumbledore stumbled back, trying to steady himself. Across from him, a green fireball floated in the air, almost blocking out the sun. The fiend fire twisted, surging like 1,000 snakes, sparks flying and smashing into Dumbledore. This was the annihilation summoned by Slytherin. The solid ground of the stone bridge turned into soft sand and gravel. Then, countless soldiers made of sand and gravel, holding sharp blades, stepped on invisible stairs, and walked out of the ground in a uniform pace. It was as if they came from an ancient battlefield. The queen they were loyal to was Ms. Ravenclaw, who stood indifferently behind them. Not only that, but Hogwarts Castle also began to stir. The statues and armor throughout the castle jumped off their supports. They swarmed outside the castle and joined the army of sand and gravel soldiers. This scene almost made Professor McGonagall, who was watching, suffer a cardiac arrest. Yes, the stone pillars were deployed. This spell guarding Hogwarts, if she, McGonagall, could use it, then so could Rowena, who had set it up. Every time a statue or piece of armor passed Helga Hufflepuff's side, it was blessed with the ancient magic. Countless silver badgers alighted on their shoulders, their magic flowing like mercury, imbuing them with even greater power. Even within Salazar's fiery sun, a running fire badger appeared, driving the fiery sun rapidly, sending forth more meteors. Those striking Dumbledore were attacks, while those striking his own stone soldiers were enchantments. Dumbledore struggled to block the incoming fiery meteors, panting heavily. Faced with this scene, for the first time, he felt powerless. So powerful, so strong. The combined power of the 3 founders, even just defending, had already exhausted all his energy. He couldn't win. The stone soldiers were already upon him. First of all, the first of the 5 must be Dumbledore. In the basement, Katoom explained to Bruce. And now there is one more person, the strongest one in Hogwarts. Bruce frowned. Isn't that still Dumbledore? Really? Katoom asked back. Then what do you think is the reason why I insist on strolling by the lake every day? Bruce suddenly stopped talking. He remembered the story Katoom told him when he first came to school. Although he is completely indifferent to worldly affairs, even if Voldemort invaded Hogwarts, he only thought it was a civil war between wizards and the course of history, and he would not take action. But the situation is different now. Some things that should have disappeared in history have reappeared, and those who did not take action will also take action. Just when Dumbledore was about to collapse from the 3 against 1, the lake behind Hogwarts suddenly began to bubble up. Gurgle, as if boiling, a black shadow grew bigger and bigger under the water. Finally, with a deafening crash of breaking waves, a massive creature broke free from the lake's confines and soared high into the air. It was a giant squid. It leaped from the water and soared over Hogwarts, its immense shadow casting a shadow over the entire castle. The giant squid was about to crash land on the stone bridge where the battle had taken place. The professors below looked up, stunned by the spectacle, bewildered by the reason for this event. As the giant squid soared above the bridge, its massive form suddenly began to shrink rapidly, landing on the surface at the size of a human. No, it was a human. He was a massive figure with a thick beard and hair, clad in crimson robes, his eyes dancing like the dance of a lion. Dumbledore had a vague suspicion. "You are." The man didn't answer, but simply extended his hand. "Come here, Sorting Hat." With a clang, the Sorting Hat shattered the window of the headmaster's office and flew into the man's hands. He thrust his hand into the Sorting Hat. With a clang of his hand, A silver sword inlaid with rubies was pulled out of the sorting hat. It clanged in the man's hand, resembling the roar of a dragon. "Old friend," he looked at Salazar Slytherin, the silver sword in hand. "I never thought we would meet again in this life." Salazar's eyes flickered with soul fire. "Godric Gryffindor, are you still alive?" Chapter 44. Voldemort stops smiling. The appearance of Godric Gryffindor was the greatest turning point in this battle. The pressure on Dumbledore suddenly eased, and the professors observing the battlefield felt a surge of confidence. 1,000 years ago, Godric, wand in hand, silver sword in hand, had vanquished countless opponents, earning him the reputation of the greatest duelist. Now, he had even vanquished death. Millennia had passed, and to what extent had Gryffindor's power grown? No one could have imagined. The balance of victory had quietly shifted. "They're about to start again." The now skeletal Ravenclaw helplessly held his forehead, motioning Hufflepuff to stay out of the way. Let these two settle their feud between themselves. What a pathetic sight. Salazar, Godric raised his sword, his gaze meeting Salazar's, a trace of sorrow in his eyes. "Even your heart has been controlled by someone else. Enough of your nonsense," Salazar said, gripping the staff tightly, his soul fire growing stronger. "You wore the same disgusting expression when you opposed my ideals." Salazar was now furious. He had finally regained consciousness, only to see something filthy the moment he opened his eyes. "Disgusting, disgusting." He suddenly raised his serpentine staff and slammed it down. Boom! Instantly, Slytherin's fiend fire sun began to rapidly expand, its power seemingly surpassing that of the sun itself. The flames emanated eerie streams of light, like countless serpent tails, swaying against the sky, dancing a destructive melody. The surrounding temperature also began to rise, scorching the stone bridge crimson, faintly showing signs of melting into liquid. As the fiend fire sun expanded to its fullest extent, time seemed to stand still for a moment. Then, the sun disintegrated, and a rain of fire descended, like the wrath of a god, threatening to reduce everything to ash. Exort God. Faced with this scene, Dumbledore instinctively wanted to summon his Patronus, the Phoenix, to ward off the fiend fire. But before he could even finish the spell, Gryffindor stalked forward. His goblin-forged sword absorbed filth and transformed it into its own power. He casually swung the silver blade, drawing the sky's flames toward the blade before being absorbed. Only countless white clouds drifted behind Gryffindor, the sword shaped into a pale banner. Then, Gryffindor swung his sword back, slicing a stream of golden flames that forged into a sword aura, hurtling towards Slytherin. The aura's speed was beyond the reach of the human eye. Salazar had no time to react before he was struck directly by the aura, his skeletal form shattered before he could even scream. Dumbledore was stunned. So were the professors. So simple? Win, Professor Flitwick roared heartbreakingly. Snape nodded. With Godric's power, victory is inevitable, Professor McGonagall smiled. There's nothing to fear now. The professors lost their voices, their entire conversation lingering on the battlefield. Yet, Gryffindor felt no joy at hearing these encouraging words. He raised his brow and turned to Dumbledore. "Albus, could you please take care of your professors?" "What's wrong?" Dumbledore asked, puzzled. "Words are magical." Gryffindor's expression grew strange. "If they keep talking, even this favorable situation will be reversed." "Never mind, it's too late." As he finished speaking, Salazar's shattered skeleton suddenly began to gather itself together. In the blink of an eye, he was back on his feet, unharmed. Gryffindor sighed. Trouble, there was no point in continuing the attack. Salazar was now a being that even the fiend fire could not incinerate. Ho ha ho ha! Suddenly, a burst of laughter rang out. It was Quirrell's voice. He ran over from a distance, knelt on the ground from a distance, and slid all the way to Salazar's side. "Master Slytherin, you are truly resurrected." Quirrell's face was filled with ecstasy beyond reason. He trembled and prostrated himself at Salazar's feet. Salazar observed the suddenly appearing dark wizard, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He looked up and said to Gryffindor, "Wait a moment. I need something." Godric shrugged, telling him to do as he pleased. The lion, representing courage and justice, would not attack by surprise. Slytherin looked at Quirrell again. "I sense a blood connection in you. Are you my descendant?" "No, not me." "My master." Quirrell quickly untied the turban wrapped around his head. Under everyone's gaze, a hideous and terrifying face appeared where the back of Quirrell's head should have been. The thing Dumbledore least expected had happened. "Voldemort, you are not dead after all." Voldemort ignored Dumbledore and immediately pledged his loyalty to his ancestors. Lord Slytherin, I am a descendant of the House of Gond, your direct bloodline, the House of Gond. Voldemort. Slytherin looked at Voldemort, seeing right through his weakened soul. You do have my bloodline, but you are in such a state that you are of no use to me. Go away. Yes, receiving his ancestors' command, Voldemort didn't hesitate at all, immediately ordering Quirrell to do as he was told and obediently retreat. The resurrection Jason had spoken of was real. Voldemort finally saw hope for resurrection. His reward for cooperating with Jason was a drop of Dionysus factor. Now, he only needed to create a physical body and he would be perfectly resurrected. Meanwhile, Salazar readjusted himself to his fighting stance. He saw the previous exchange as merely a test. He had suffered a minor defeat, but there was something to be said for not giving his all. Gryffindor had already drawn his noble phantasm, while he himself lacked a wand. Clearly, the situation was lopsided. But that was the end of it. Salazar, too, had his own noble phantasm. Voldemort was practically trembling with excitement. With his ancestors backing him, the resentment and hatred he had harbored for over a decade would finally be repaid. He was already laughing wildly inwardly. Suddenly, Salazar waved his hand and called out, "Bring the soul box." With the incantation, a locket suddenly flew out from the Black Mansion at 12 Grimwald Place in London. It traveled hundreds of miles at breakneck speed, landing in Salazar's hands in the blink of an eye. The moment he grasped the locket, Salazar sensed something was amiss. A quick inspection revealed the cause, and he erupted in curses. Who the hell turned my noble phantasm into a Horcrux? Voldemort's laughter suddenly ceased. Disgusting, Salazar gritted his teeth, his magical power surging, and in the blink of an eye, he completely strangled the soul fragments within the locket. At the same time, Voldemort's face behind Quirrell suddenly revealed an expression of extreme pain. But he was holding it in, not daring to cry out. If he made a sound, it would be like confessing to the Slytherins. At the same time, Salazar's act of summoning the noble phantasm reminded Hufflepuff, who had been watching the show. She also had a noble phantasm circulating in the world. Could it be made into a Horcrux? No, she had to check it out. So Hufflepuff stretched out her hand and chanted the spell, Cup of Gold. Hearing this spell, Voldemort wanted to kneel on the spot. Chapter 45 I'm Batman. Gringotts, Underground Vault. A relentless thumping sound echoed, as if something were banging against the vault's iron door. The goblins on duty noticed something was amiss, their first thought being a break-in. But before they could verify anything, the heavy door of one of the vaults was suddenly slammed open. A golden cup, with a thud, broke through the ground and soared into the sky, knocking down a goblin along the way. The goblin, dazed, took a long time to regain consciousness. Then, leaping to his feet, he screamed, "Emergency alert! Emergency alert!" In record time, the cup flew back into Helga Hufflepuff's hands. Helga then discovered that her cup had also been transformed into a Horcrux. There's something foul. Helga casually strangled the soul fragment within. Voldemort felt the agony of his soul being annihilated once again, the pain piercing his very being, yet he dared not utter a single sound. He truly dared not utter a single sound. After strangling the impurity, Helga reminded Rowena Ravenclaw, "You should check your noble phantasm too. I'm afraid it's been turned into a Horcrux." The crown of wisdom was contaminated, and Helga felt bad thinking about it. But Rowena remained calm, saying, "I can't check it. You know my daughter stole it. She cast a shielding spell, and I can't sense it." Hearing this, Voldemort burst into tears. "Thank you, Ms. Ravenclaw. You are the most gentle and kind of the four founding fathers. I should have been sorted into Ravenclaw. Hearing you mention it, I remember that you died of anger over this." Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff had been close friends in life. When Rowena died, Helga was deeply saddened. But now, after her resurrection, she spoke of her friend's tragedy again, without any emotion. The imperious rite had distorted Hufflepuff's kindness. Helga, holding her golden cup, suddenly thought, since she had summoned her noble phantasm back, she might as well use it. She extended her finger and tapped the rim of the golden cup 3 times. Clear water immediately gushed out, filling the cup to the brim. Helga took a sip of the water, which transformed into a stream, moistening every bone in Hufflepuff's skeletal body. Then, something incredible happened. A layer of transparent skin first appeared over the Hufflepuff skeleton, then expanded, supporting the loose robes. Immediately, Hufflepuff's body began to repair itself, transforming into human flesh and blood at a speed visible to the naked eye. Helga Hufflepuff, from a skeleton, returned to the kind, plump, red-haired woman she had been in life, even younger, appearing only in her early 30s. However, her eyes lacked the once tolerant and kind-hearted look. Helga, Ravenclaw suddenly spoke, "I'll have a sip too." "No more." Helga wiped the water from her mouth, refusing to blurt out the answer. "I'm not asking you, I'm informing you." With a flick of his finger, the golden cup flew out of Helga's grasp, but Helga didn't mind and let it go. Rowena caught the cup, still half full of water. She drank it all in one gulp. The same thing happened to Ravenclaw, her body beginning to heal, transforming from a skeleton back into a human. Her appearance had aged considerably, but her demeanor remained unchanged. A faint, teasing smile still clung to her face, beautiful yet somewhat intimidating. Rowena then noticed Salazar, standing in front of her, glancing back. "Don't look. It's gone," Ravenclaw gestured, turning the cup upside down. "Besides, you look quite good now, much better than that monkey-like face you had in life." "I didn't want it anyway," the Slytherin said coldly, turning his head away. In the distant professorial room, the ghost Helena saw her mother's familiar face and burst into tears, wishing she could run back to her and kneel before her to confess. The Bloody Baron was almost unable to stop them. "That's not the real Ravenclaw," Baron kept warning Helena in her ear. "She's just a resurrected monster, not your mother." He had barely finished his words when he felt a pair of eyes fixed on him, a tingling sensation. Automatically, the Bloody Baron turned his head and saw the Ravenclaw glance at him from a distance. Undoubtedly, she had also seen Helena. However, as Baron Hyde said, Rowena showed no emotion, as if she had simply seen two strange apparitions. She had lost her love. No one at the scene noticed that someone who had once been a prominent presence had vanished. Jason Todd, upon the Gryffinder's arrival, realized he was no longer needed here. So, using the Batman's own skills, he escaped this troubled area. He was going to find his true target, the little bat trapped underground. In the basement, Eris's room, Bruce had heard Katoom's entire plan. He understood everything else, except for one thing. "Why do you think Batman can be the fifth man?" Bruce said with a wry smile. "Even though I've already failed, and so miserably," Quirrell mocked him to his face. "Because Bruce Wayne can admit defeat, but Batman can't," Katoom countered. "Do you want Batman's first appearance to become a dark chapter in history?" Quirrell mocked. "Your dreams. Don't you want to get even? And Jason, this guy's about to make a big move, shouldn't you give him a beating? In fact, all you need is me. I can apprehend you out of here anytime, but think about it, Bruce. Isn't it time for Batman to clean up the mess now?" These words resonated with Bruce, stirring his resentment. But he also realized that he still had many shortcomings. "I can't do anything right now," Bruce shook his head. "How can a Batman like me turn the tables?" Katoom chuckled faintly. "It's simple. I'll just pretend to be Batman, right?" With that, his aura finally revealed itself, no longer concealed. The connection between their souls synchronized Bruce's and Katoom's heartbeats. On the wall, the owl's silhouette grew larger, spreading its wings to envelop Bruce. Simultaneously, Bruce's shadow began to lengthen, like an 11-year-old suddenly transformed into a 20-something. Finally, Katoom and Bruce merged into one, and a Batman unlike any other appeared in this world. His appearance was identical to the Batman of the main world, but within was a different soul. He, Batman, looking at his current appearance, laughed uncontrollably. Ha, ha ha. Chapter 46. I am revenge, I am the night. Katoom clenched his fists, feeling the long-lost feeling of his human form. Bruce temporarily surrendered control of his body, yet he could still see everything going on outside, even conversing with his owl. "Katoom," Bruce offered a final warning before leaving Aerith Hall. Don't kill in the name of Batman." "It's okay," Katoom assured Bruce. "Quirrell isn't human." With that, he flicked his cape and disapparated from the basement. The stone bridge outside Hogwarts Castle. Salazar hissed, a sinister and eerie sound, as if summoning something. Then, a subtle rumble from the ancient pipe connecting Hogwarts to the Great Lake shattered the tranquility of the lake. A dark figure glided silently from the pipe's opening, snaking along the lake bed. As the shadow approached, ripples began to form on the surface of the water. Suddenly, a massive snake head broke through the water, splashing everywhere. The head, like a mountain, its tongue spitting out. This was the basilisk, dormant in the Chamber of Secrets, now awakened by its true master. Salazar leaped atop the snake's head, looking down at his former friend and lifelong enemy, Gryffindor. When the basilisk appeared, Dumbledore immediately placed the Elder Wand to his throat and shouted a warning, "Don't look into its eyes. Anyone who made eye contact with a basilisk would die instantly." Gryffindor narrowed his eyes, staring at Salazar, and sighed deeply. "You always act so recklessly, with so many children in the school." Yet he still brazenly summoned the basilisk. He leaped to his feet, his body transforming in midair. Gryffindor transformed once again into a giant squid, slamming into the basilisk and Salazar. The basilisk couldn't dodge, and its head was slammed directly into the water. For a moment, the lake churned, and the waves rose higher than the stone bridge. The giant squid and the basilisk grappled, its tentacles tightly binding the basilisk and, along with Salazar, carrying them to the bottom of the lake. The lake's surface heaved and simmered like a boiling swirl. Though the underwater battle was invisible, its intensity was easy to imagine. Dumbledore remained alone on the bridge. Quirrell let out a frenzied laugh. Standing beside the two remaining founders, he taunted, "Dumbledore, you can't defeat the three of us." Dumbledore couldn't argue with that statement. The dead, resurrected by the Dionysus factor, possessed boundless healing powers. Even if he desperately defeated the Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs, they would soon be reborn. The only option now was to see if he could take them somewhere else and find a way to seal them away. But, could he do it? Rowena and Helga would surely be on guard. What to do? Just as Dumbledore felt powerless, an unexpected voice suddenly rang out beside him. "The dead have risen? Seeing such a sight would make me die with no regrets." Dumbledore turned and saw an unexpected face. Nickel? Newt, the legendary alchemist Nicholas Flamel and the brilliant Hogwarts dropout Newt Scamander appeared beside him. They had paraded to Dumbledore's side without him noticing. Seeing them, Dumbledore breathed a sigh of relief, but still remained puzzled. "What brings you here? Didn't you send us a letter for Christmas?" Nicole demanded. "It said Hogwarts would be in danger, and the moment you leave, that's when the danger begins." Meanwhile, Newt, now nearly 100 years old, nodded. "It also said we should be prepared for battle." At Newt's feet, a cowhide trunk vibrated, as if something was trying to escape. Dumbledore was bewildered by their response. A letter? What letter? He hadn't sent any to these two. But now was not the time to dwell on that. With Nico and Newt around, Dumbledore wouldn't have to fight alone. The battle began again. Newcomer Nico conjured a ball of clay in his hands. He kneaded it a few times, then opened his hands. Countless clay figurines leaped from his palms, growing in the wind until they reached 3 or 4 meters high. They formed a wall, blocking the Ravenclaw soldiers. "Alchemy," the Ravenclaw sneered. "I happen to know a little bit about it." On the other side, Nit stood before the Hufflepuffs. "Greetings." Nit tipped his hat and saluted. "Madam Helga, I'm a Hufflepuff student." "It's an honor to meet you." Helga nodded, a formal greeting. Newt didn't consider himself a combative wizard and generally avoided conflict. But if he had to, he wouldn't fear anyone. Newt kicked a nearby box, and it opened automatically. A massive creature with a hunched back leaped out. It had long horns, resembled a saber-toothed tiger, and its mouth was lined with slippery tentacles. Purplehorns, extremely dangerous magical creatures with a strong aggressive nature, were brought by Newt on this trip. Beyond that, there were many more surprises waiting to be unlocked by Hufflepuff. As the Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs were led away, Quirrell, once complacent, suddenly sensed something was amiss. He was now the only one standing there. Across from him, Dumbledore twirled the Elder Wand, glaring coldly at him. How did this come to this? Quirrell thought over the events. What on earth had happened? Jason had resurrected the 3 founders, and now it was his turn to confront Dumbledore. Jason walked through the corridors of Hogwarts Castle. The professors guarding the entrance hadn't noticed him enter. The portraits on the wall covered their eyes, proving they had seen nothing. As Jason approached the spot Quirrell had pointed out, he heard unremarkable footsteps. A young wizard had slipped out of their dormitories, hoping to intervene in the battle to defend the castle. Is this even a school? Jason fumed. The kids in this school were so fearless. Entering the school amidst obvious danger, their first thought wasn't to protect themselves, but to overreach and show off their abilities. Students like these would be docile in America. Jason pulled out his gun, ready to fire 2 blanks to scare these reckless students away. But before he could fire, he heard a deep, deep voice. Leviosa. The Gryffindor students hiding in the corner suddenly levitated, carried away by an invisible force to their dormitories. Jason frowned, his finger on the trigger. Who? He sensed a hostile presence. As he asked, a dark figure appeared before him. The figure floated in the air, his cape rustling. Behind him, countless bats danced like a cloud of disaster. The sight of that face was a profound shock to Jason, his pupils trembling, his words choking in his mouth. His throat was dry. Don't you recognize me? The other person slowly floated down, tiptoeing to the ground. I am Revenge, I am the Knight. Katoom lowered his voice and uttered the name Jason had been thinking about day and night. I am Batman. Chapter 47. You are my favorite Robin. Katoom was pleased with his planned entrance, but Bruce couldn't stop asking questions. How did you fly, Bruce? All I can say is, think about it, Katoom said. Just cast a levitation spell on your shoes, and they'll fly. The same goes for the windlass, automatic cape. Next, watch and learn carefully, and see how I kill and destroy hearts. Batman no longer looked like a teenager, but had taken on the physique of an adult after Katoom had applied an aging spell. All of this was done to satisfy Jason's fantasy of Batman, to create an unforgettable encounter for him. Clearly, the effect was remarkable. Bruce, Jason gripped his pistols tightly, pointing them at Batman. You're finally coming out. His heart was in turmoil. If Quirrell had trapped Bruce in the basement, as he'd originally said, Batman shouldn't have been there. And this Batman was clearly no child. There were too many suspicious points. If he calmed down and thought about it, he'd see something was amiss. But Jason couldn't care less. He had come into this world to seek revenge against Batman. If the other party had been a child, he would have been wary. Now that Batman was an adult, he could unleash his might. Bang, 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 Jason fired without hesitation. With the mind of a beast, he shot at his adoptive father's heart. But Katoom didn't move, letting the barrage of bullets rain down on him. Just as he was about to be hit, he raised his hand. Instantly, like an invisible wall, the bullet stopped in midair. Katoom flicked his finger, redirecting the bullets, aiming at Jason. Go! The bullets fired by Jason, now imbued with kinetic energy, flew towards Jason himself. Jason dodged awkwardly, barely avoiding being hit. What's the saying about waving a hand to cast a spell? Bruce in his mind asked curiously. Doesn't wandless spells require an arm to direct them? Katoom's move to block the bullets was undoubtedly an advanced application of the levitation charm. But if you can cast a spell without a wand, why would you need an arm to direct it? Nothing, Katoom said casually. It just looks cooler this way. Okay. Returning to reality, Jason let out a hysterical laugh. I knew it, he accused Bruce of his crimes, as if to convince himself. You really held back when you taught me. You never taught me this kind of magic, never even demonstrated it to me. Jason was truly Bruce's Robin. He was now paranoid that Bruce was partial to him. Maybe he never even cared about him. Katoom sarcastically retorted to Bruce, see? You need to change your parenting methods, or else good kids will be driven crazy. He then returned his attention to Jason. I don't understand what you're so surprised about, Batman said coldly. There's more to this world than you can imagine. He suddenly pointed one hand to the sky and the other to the ground. No weapons allowed here. Batman was like commanding the world, stating his own laws. Jason's pistols suddenly flew out of his hands and fell to the ground. No matter how he tried to pick them up, they would fall again. Just as Batman had said, weapons were prohibited here. This scene opened Bruce's eyes. How did you do that? Such power, even the power to set the laws of the world. Don't underestimate the Demon King. Katoom feigned a moment of deception before revealing the truth. It was a disarmament spell. I used the Expelliarmus. The Expelliarmus spell was Harry Potter's signature weapon. A common spell in the wizarding world. Just the Expelliarmus, Bruce retorted. But every time Jason picked up his pistols, they fell out of his hands, because I've used the Expelliarmus spell so many times. If Jason had heard Katoom's response, he'd probably have been furious. Bruce, didn't I tell you to think carefully? Katoom said. Don't underestimate any spell. When mastered, they have incredible power. He meant it. Katoom had always felt that in the Harry Potter world, spellcasting actually came down to a certain level of proficiency. At peak proficiency, a spell's power would transform. For example, in Fantastic Beasts 2, Nicholas Flamel cast the All Curses ending to ward off Grindelwald's flames, powerful enough to incinerate Paris. While seemingly grand and impressive, it was essentially a universal counterspell. Nicholas's inherent strength, combined with his profound mastery of spells, allowed him to transform a common spell into a forbidden one. Katoom was similarly skilled, though the spells he diligently practiced were silent ones. The combination of wandless and silent casting could yield unexpected results. For example, right now, Jason, Batman said regretfully, I know you've suffered some regretful things, but that's all in the past. We should look to the future. Impossible. Jason clenched his fists, refusing to yield to Batman. He'd endured so much pain, and now he was being asked to undo it all? Absolutely not. Even if he couldn't use weapons, it didn't matter. Relying solely on his fighting skills, he wouldn't necessarily lose. He held a deep-seated hatred, and now it all channeled into his strength. Batman sighed. There's nothing I can do. He suddenly thrust out his hand, palms open. Jason flew. Swish. Jason suddenly felt his body completely out of control, levitating into the air, soaring towards Batman. There, Batman's fist was ready. Bang! The magically empowered fist slammed into Jason's face. Jason flew out like a kite with a broken string. Batman calmly put his hands behind his back and shook them off. He'd been careless. His punch had landed on Jason's metal cowl, and it hurt. You're relying on your magic. When Jason rose again, his cowl had a dent, but he remained unconvinced, even challenging Bruce. If you only use the techniques I taught you, I can definitely beat you. His point was simple. Batman was no match for him in physical combat. Katoom nodded. Okay, I'll beat you until you're convinced. Bruce was a little worried. Do you really want to fight him in close combat? My physical fitness isn't that strong. He couldn't understand why he should abandon his advantages in a fight. He was originally an 11-year-old, and even if he aged to adulthood, his physical fitness would only be average. Katoom, however, appeared confident. It's okay. I'll use my magic to strengthen your body. You'll have no problem beating Jason up. Bruce, didn't you just promise not to use magic? Just listen. Don't take it seriously. Katoom shook his head. There's no need for morality against such a stubborn guy. Batman's promise instantly boosted Jason's confidence. The battle was about to begin. Jason's punch flew like a cannonball, but Batman dodged it with incredible speed. Then, Katoom's counter elbow followed, but Jason also deftly dodged it. The two men shifted positions, their movements accelerating, each contact accompanied by the muffled crunch of muscle and the snap of bone. They grappled like trapped beasts, Jason's breathing growing heavier as Katoom exerted immense pressure. During the fight, his cowl was even ripped off. Jason's strength was fading, and his movements began to falter. Batman easily parried his every move. Suddenly, Batman leaped high, striking Jason's neck with both palms, a powerful blow. Jason staggered, but while he didn't fall, his breathing was ragged. Finally, a lapse in defense allowed Batman's fist to strike him in the face. Then came the torrent of righteous blows. Why are you so stubborn? Katoom delivered a powerful blow, bringing tears to Jason's eyes. Why can't you feel my love for you? Another punch knocked out two of Jason's teeth. Why did you come into this world to cause trouble for others? Punch after punch, relentless. Jason was stunned, his face bruised and swollen. Not satisfied, Katoom followed with a spinning kick, sending Jason flying and slamming into the wall. Jason struggled to his feet, but Batman didn't give him a chance. Quickly advancing, he delivered a crushing blow, finally knocking Jason off his feet. Impossible. Jason slumped to the ground, coughing up blood, gasping for air, his face burning with pain. He couldn't understand how he had lost. And so easily. Give up, Jason, Batman said condescendingly, the same words. Don't dwell on the past, look to the future. I won't forgive you. Jason gritted his teeth, refusing to yield. I'm going to destroy everything you have, everything you hold dear. Katoom sighed. Was it really going to come to this? The only way to make Jason admit his mistake was to kill him. He raised his head, his tone softened. You can't destroy everything I cherish. I can, Jason roared. Then go kill yourself. Suddenly, Batman's answer blocked all of Jason's next words. His expression was dull for a moment, not knowing what Batman meant. Was it what he thought he meant? Katoom felt that this was not enough, so he simply picked up Jason, looked him straight in the eyes, and said angrily, I don't understand why you can be so confused. What do you mean I give up on you? I will never give up on you. Jason, you are my favorite Robin. Boom. Jason's mind went blank in an instant. What did he just hear? Did Batman really say this in person? Why did he say it now? If he had said this to himself earlier, he wouldn't have chased Bruce to this world. On the other side, Bruce felt goosebumps all over his body. You are my favorite Robin? He exaggeratedly repeated Katoom's words, then, eyes wide, asked, how could you say something like that? It just came out of my mouth. Katoom replied casually, if I ever get the chance to see Dick or Tim again, I'll say the same thing. Dick was the first Robin, Tim the third. They were both Batman's wings. It had to be said that these heartbreaking words were truly effective. Jason no longer had any desire to resist. As Katoom let go, he fell to the ground, his eyes glazed over, and he kept repeating Katoom's words. I'm your favorite Robin, I'm your favorite Robin. Oh, Jason. Katoom squatted down and patted Jason on the shoulder. If you had been smarter, we wouldn't have come to this. He then held out his hand to Jason. Alright, hand over the Dionysus factor. Chapter 48 Death Eternal Life. Hearing this, Jason's eyes suddenly sharpened. Dionysus factor, he said in a gruff voice. So you were lying to me about what you just said to me, right? You were just after the Dionysus factor. Even Bruce felt something was amiss. Katoom, you shouldn't be so blunt. Katoom was the only one who remained relaxed. He looked at Jason with a look of dismay. Idiot, he raised his right hand. Get bigger. This time, he directly chanted the swelling spell. As soon as he finished speaking, his right hand began to swell, instantly resembling the arm of a giant. Jason was stunned, completely enveloped in the shadow of Katoom's fist. Did you see that? I could have hit you with this fist just now. Katoom shook his right arm, feeling as if it were shaking like an earthquake. But I didn't. Do you know why? Jason shook his head blankly. Because I never considered you an enemy. Katoom silently cast a spell, restoring his right arm to its original shape. Jason, you're my family. Family members should resort to such extreme measures. The word family instantly made Jason's head spin. Every word Katoom spoke to him today was a critical hit combined with true damage, directly hitting the softest part of Jason's heart. He wasn't an orphan hated by everyone, he had a family too. With Batman personally recognizing him as a family member, what did a little Dionysus factor mean? He finally produced the test tube and handed it to Katoom. Katoom accepted it with a clear conscience and put it away. The fact that he was able to hand over the Dionysus factor showed that Jason had finally been relieved. At that moment, a dark light enveloped Jason's body. He only needed one glance to understand what was happening. Looks like my time's up, Jason said with a wry smile. My contract with Barbatos was to capture you, but now that I've given up on that idea, the contract automatically expires. I have to return to my own world. Is that even possible? Katoom saw Jason looking at him expectantly, as if he still had some unfulfilled wish. Katoom immediately understood what he meant. He leaned down, hugged Jason, and patted him on the back. There's nothing to regret. Return to your own world and start a new life. Don't dwell on the past. Katoom released his hand and saw Jason finally smile, 2 teeth missing. He couldn't help but add, when you get back, get those teeth fixed. I'll ask Wayne Enterprise to reimburse you for them. Thank you, Bruce. Jason finally remembered something. I have a friend in this world named Lupin. I promised to help him change his life, but now it seems I can't. I don't want to go back on my word, Bruce. Can I entrust Lupin to you? Yes, Katoom nodded without hesitation. Bruce, promise you. Jason finally had no regrets. He raised his head and said goodbye to the past in a relieved tone. Today is my best day. After that, Jason's body turned into a stream of light and disappeared in this world. Okay, take care of one. Katoom stood up, walked to the other side, and picked up the red metal hood that had been pulled away and left in this world. Time is running out. We have to move faster, otherwise we will miss it. What will we miss? Bruce had been silent just now. He saw his own shadow in Jason. But Katoom's words made him nervous again. Is something else going to happen? Nothing, Katoom said casually. It's just that if we don't move faster, Quirrell may be beaten to death. When Katoom walked out of the castle, he saw a scene that was almost apocalyptic. In the lake, a basilisk and a giant squid were entangled, raising huge waves. Fire dragons danced in the sky, and their flaming breaths repeatedly attacked a huge badger-shaped phantom, but were immediately dispelled. On the bridge, countless alchemical giants formed a line and charged each other. The bridge trembled and was about to collapse. Because of the existence of the Dionysus factor, the three founders were almost immortal. Hogwarts was already on the verge of collapse. As for Quirrell, he had been tied up by Dumbledore with the golden ropes, his eyes closed, and he didn't know whether he was alive or dead. The back of Quirrell's head was bald, and Voldemort had slipped away at some point. "It seems I didn't make it," Katoom was very regretful. He said to Bruce, "Quirrell has been dealt with. I was thinking of getting revenge for you and letting him taste justice. Forget it, this will be Voldemort's fault later. Now it's time to end this farce." After saying this, he jumped up and stood on the top of the gate. Silence, his voice was amplified 1,000 times, encompassing the entire Hogwarts. Everyone looked up at the suddenly appearing black figure. No one had seen him before, nor did they know who he was. Batman raised his red cowl high in his hand, his cape rustling behind him. The sight of the cowl instantly brought silence to the room. Jason was dead? Such thoughts permeated everyone's minds, even overshadowing any doubts about Batman's identity. If Jason were truly dead, the impact would be immeasurable. The imperious ritual following the Founder's resurrection had bound the Slytherins to their loyalty to Jason. Now, with Jason dead, they were free. Salazar's soul fire flickered a few times, but he realized Jason was indeed gone. Waste, he really died just like that, he cursed, then realized Jason's death was a blessing for him. He made a quick decision. "Godric, you've saved your life today. Let's continue our battle later." Salazar was free, and the most important thing now was to return to his peak form. Gryffindor frowned, realizing that Salazar wanted to leave. He wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Salazar laughed wildly, saying that if he wanted to leave, no one could stop him. He apparated and instantly disappeared from above the basilisk's head. At the same time, Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff made the same decision. As the three founders left, the alchemical giants turned into sand and gravel, and the badger-shaped phantoms also disintegrated on the spot. "We can't let them go." Dumbledore realized this immediately. "If these three people successfully leave, there will be endless troubles." Gryffindor's eyes darkened, and he also apparated and chased after them. This time, it was really Slytherin's victorious retreat, showing his composure, while Gryffindor hurriedly pursued, unable to hide his decline. Bruce was also a little anxious. "Katoom, you're just going to watch them leave? What else can we do? If we keep fighting, Hogwarts will be gone," Katoom said. "They have the Dionysus factor in their bodies. Before we find a solution, a ceasefire is the best option." Bruce was a little confused. "If we can't deal with them now, won't it be even more difficult to deal with them later?" "Well," Katoom said vaguely, "maybe we can only leave it to the God of Death." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Shadows of the Second Wizarding War. Some time had passed since the Hogwarts crisis. Jason and Quirrell's plot had been completely thwarted, the only remaining shadow of hope being the rebirth of the three founders of Hogwarts. Previously, they had been controlled by the Imperious Right, becoming Jason's tools. Now, with Jason gone, they lost their purpose and, in a state of profound confusion, had no choice but to retreat. Following the Gryffindor's pursuit, the four founders vanished together. Everyone knew they were still alive, but no one knew where they had gone. Furthermore, the man who had dispatched Jason and appeared in public had become the focus of much discussion. "Everyone says Batman is the patron saint of Hogwarts," Bruce said as he went downstairs for the end-of-year banquet. Justin followed him, chattering non-stop. "That makes sense, doesn't it? With so many bats at Hogwarts, maybe one of them could become Batman." Batman was the name the man had given himself. After the battle, he had a private conversation with Dumbledore, Nicholas Flamel, and the others. The students didn't know the details of their discussion, but they knew it was something serious. "I'm not interested in Batman." Bruce walked forward without looking around. "He's just a weirdo in tights." "Batman is not a weirdo," Justin protested, then followed Bruce's footsteps. "Just listen carefully to what I say. I believe after listening, you will become a fan of Batman too." Bruce still looked bored. His thoughts unconsciously drifted back to the private conversation on the day after the battle. Deathly Hallows, in the headmaster's office, a roll of bandage flew into the air and automatically bandaged Dumbledore's wound. Nick Flamel and Nit sat nearby, both looking a little sluggish. They hadn't experienced such a high-intensity battle in many years. But at this moment, all three of them were distracted, completely shocked by the term Batman uttered. "Don't you know?" Katoom shrugged. "The Deathly Hallows are the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak." "I know." Dumbledore quickly signaled Batman to stop. "Mr. Batman, we're just not digesting everything you just said. Those resurrected by Jason were immortal, and ordinary means could not send them back to the underworld. The only viable solution was to gather the three Deathly Hallows and become the Master of Death. Death would take away those who did not belong in this world." It sounded perfectly reasonable, but Dumbledore still had concerns. Assembling the Deathly Hallows brought back painful memories from a long time ago. Then, Nico Flamel spoke. "Mr. Batman, right," he strummed his words, trying to sound friendly. "It's not that we don't trust you, but until now, we know almost nothing about you except your name, and Batman doesn't sound like your real name at all. If we're going to cooperate, at least we should be honest with each other, right?" Katoom asked. "What does honesty mean?" Nico said. "At least you should take off your mask, is that all?" "No problem." Katoom took off his mask without hesitation. Then Nico took a breath of cold air. Under Batman's mask, there was another mask. Katoom put the mask back on. "Is this all right? You have seen what you should see. If you still have doubts, then there is nothing I can do." Dumbledore and the other two looked at each other, knowing that Batman had made the final concession. Now it is time to seriously consider everything Batman said. Jason disappeared, and the Imperious ritual had no object of loyalty. The three founders who were originally in Chaos might slowly pick up their original intentions. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff may not necessarily be enemies of Hogwarts. But Slytherin is different. He attaches great importance to bloodline. Now that he is back in the world and sees the decline of pure-blood wizards, what will he feel? What's more, there is Voldemort by his side fanning the flames. The Second Wizarding War is imminent. "I know." Dumbledore sighed. "I will find a way to find the whereabouts of the Resurrection Stone." As soon as these words came out, Nick and Newt's expressions instantly became a little strange. Wasn't it about finding the Deathly Hallows? How come when it comes to you, the only thing left is to find the Resurrection Stone? "Do you, Dumbledore, know the whereabouts of the other two Hallows?" "That's good." Batman nodded. "In addition, you wizards should also be prepared. If the Second Wizarding War really breaks out, it will surely sweep the world." Dumbledore nodded. "I have an idea." "That's good." After Batman said this, there was no further news. Dumbledore looked up, but found that Batman had disappeared at some point. "Is he gone?" Dumbledore was a little regretful. "In fact, I still have a lot to ask him." Nicholas Flamel immediately understood the implication of Dumbledore's words, and he sternly advised, "Albus, don't have the wrong idea." He did not point it out, and the conversation was carried out in a tacit understanding between the two. Nicholas Flamel knew Dumbledore's past and knew that he also had people he wanted to resurrect. It was impossible for Dumbledore to remain indifferent when he saw the three founders resurrected and returned to the world. But that was wrong. The resurrection of the dead was not a power they could control. "I know, Nico, I know." Dumbledore leaned back in the soft chair, feeling lost. The things he shouldered now could no longer allow him to act recklessly. Dumbledore brought his thoughts back to business. The war could break out at any time now, and the school's teaching must be prepared. "Hogwarts needs to introduce several new teachers in the next school year," he said. "I have to find some old friends. Things are different now. With a powerful enemy at hand, the grudges of the past can be put aside." A few old friends. Nicholas Flamel remained non-committal. The so-called several actually means the most important one is only that one, right? Batman appeared outside the castle. His body began to shrink and turned into the appearance of an 11-year-old child again. The control of the body returned to Bruce's hands. "I'm so tired." Katoom leaned on Bruce's shoulder, looking half dead. Bruce himself also had back pain, but he did not complain. Instead, he was still immersed in the conversation between Katoom and Dumbledore just now. "The Deathly Hallows, the Resurrection Stone," he muttered to himself. "Don't think about it," Katoom interrupted Bruce's ambition directly. "The Resurrection Stone can't resurrect your parents." "What about the Dionysus factor?" Bruce took out the test tube from his waist. There was still more than half of the Dionysus factor left in it, which could be used at least 7 times. "That won't work either. If your parents are resurrected, you will be the one to die." One of the 3 Wayne family members had to die in that alley anyway. Bruce looked up, wanting to say he was willing to sacrifice his life for his parents. But Katoom had no intention of listening to him continue. The owl's figure flashed, and the test tube of Dionysus Factor was in his claws. Don't think about it anymore. You will never change your fate unless you deal with Barbatos. Katoom put the test tube into his feathers. I'll keep this for you for now. I'll give it back to you when you grow up. Chapter 50. End of the school year. Back to the present. When Bruce arrived at the Great Hall, it was already packed. It was adorned with flags and banners representing the 4 major houses. According to the original story, only Slytherin's green and silver would have been the colors, as they had won the House Cup. However, things were different now. With Slytherin himself resurrected and a shadow cast over Hogwarts, it would have seemed odd to display the Slytherin banner. So, Dumbledore changed tradition and decorated the hall in the colors of all 4 houses. A moment later, Dumbledore arrived, and the clamor in the Great Hall gradually died down. Another year has passed, Dumbledore said cheerfully. This has been an incredibly exciting year. I'm sure your little minds are filled with more than they used to be. You still have a whole summer ahead of you. Dumbledore, seemingly unfazed by the pressure he felt, smiled broadly as he delivered his speech as headmaster. First, we must hold the House Cup Awards ceremony. The scores for each house are as follows. 4th place, Gryffindor, 342 points. 3rd place, Hufflepuff, 402 points. Ravenclaw, 426 points. Slytherin, 462 points. Bruce and Kachulum's time travel had caused some changes in the year's standings, but Slytherin inevitably remained in first place. A thunderous cheer and stamping of feet erupted from the Slytherin table. At Hufflepuff, Kachulum dejectedly asked, "Do we have to wait until Old Den finishes speaking before we can eat?" The owl's stomach rumbled with hunger. He had to eat immediately. Wait a moment. Bruce stared at Dumbledore on the stage, feeling a pang of guilt. He had indeed been wrong to blindly doubt Dumbledore. Dumbledore was innocent, and Bruce acknowledged his mistakes, but he also maintained his judgment. Dumbledore had the potential to become the Dark Lord. Yes, well done, Slytherin, Dumbledore said from the stage. However, recent events must also be taken into account. The Great Hall grew very quiet, and the Slytherin smiles faded a little. It's coming, Katoom said absently. Old Dumbledore will start thinking of ways to give Gryffindor points. Indeed, it should be Gryffindor. The founder personally protected Hogwarts, a truly remarkable achievement. As you all know, not long ago, Hogwarts encountered some incidents. Our Professor Quirrell nearly put everyone in danger. Dumbledore peered through his half-moon glasses at the hushed students below. Yet at this crucial moment, one student, relying on his courage, wisdom, integrity, and conviction, overcame the numerous obstacles set by the professors and stood before Quirrell. So, I have decided to award 100 points to Mr. Bruce Wayne. Someone standing outside the Great Hall at that moment might have thought there had been an explosion. The cheers from the Hufflepuff table practically tore off the enchanted ceiling. With a bonus of 100 points, Hufflepuff won the House Cup. Bruce was overwhelmed by the crowd, each wanting to hug the little bat. This unprecedented experience left Bruce bewildered. Katoom was no better. Some classmates, unable to hug Bruce, instead threw the owl high into the air in celebration. "You're crazy." Katoom flapped its wings a few times in the air, then flew away cursing. Surrounded by the crowd, Bruce looked at Dumbledore on the stage in confusion, only to find Dumbledore smiling back at him. "Bruce," Dumbledore's barely audible voice echoed in Bruce's ears. "Come to my office later." After the clamor and jubilation, this year's end-of-year banquet concluded with Hufflepuff glory. Bruce walked towards Dumbledore's office, Katoom, a ball of food, resting on his shoulder. It was still that hideous stone monster. Bruce uttered the password, lemon sherbet, the statue spun, and Bruce ascended the stairs. After knocking on the door, Dumbledore's voice rang out, "Come in." Bruce opened the door. "Ah. Bruce, welcome." Dumbledore sat behind his desk, a kind smile on his face. "Please take a seat." Just like last time, as Bruce sat down, a cup of hot cocoa appeared before him. Then an owl hooted. "Headmaster," Bruce said. "What is it you want me to do?" Dumbledore was silent for a moment, then said, "To apologize." "Bruce, apology?" "Yes, an apology." Dumbledore sighed. "I once had some unjustifiable suspicions about you." "Such groundless suspicions are unworthy of a headmaster." "Bruce, I offer my sincere apologies. I hope you can forgive the foolishness of an old man, this. Bruce thought for a moment, then said reluctantly, "It's all right, Headmaster. This matter is over." A relieved smile appeared on Dumbledore's face. "Thank you, Bruce. You have qualities as precious as gold." He stretched out his palm and drew a stroke in the air, and a paper package appeared on the table. "What is this?" Bruce asked. "My apology gift to you," Dumbledore smiled. "Open it and have a look." Bruce opened the paper package, and a black cloak appeared in front of him. It had a smooth texture and felt very good to the touch. "This is a cloak woven from the hair of the Thestrals," Dumbledore explained. "The Thestrals are a very mysterious creature. They can fly, become invisible, and have a strong resistance to dark magic. The cloak made of their hair perfectly inherits these abilities: flight, invisibility, and magic resistance. I think giving this cloak to an adventurous little wizard is the most appropriate gift." Actually, Dumbledore didn't explain some things. Thestral hair is a substance with powerful magic power, and only wizards who can face death can master it. The core of the Elder Wand is the tail hair of the Thestral. After listening to the principal's introduction, Bruce seemed a little flattered. "This is too valuable, Mr. Principal. I can't accept it." Dumbledore shook his head. "Accept it, Bruce. In fact, considering your merits, this gift is already light." Bruce was puzzled. "What merits have I made?" "You'll know later, Bruce. It's too early now." Dumbledore kept Bruce in suspense. He wouldn't explain to Bruce just how big a secret he'd uncovered. Dumbledore knew full well Bruce's disguise to find the Philosopher's Stone. After all, it was a failed disguise, and Quirrell even recognized him instantly. But that wasn't the point. The point was that Batman, who later appeared, was dressed exactly like Bruce. This gradually made Dumbledore understand everything. Bruce was an orphan, and his father had died young. Although he was known to be a wealthy American, subsequent investigations had yielded no further clues. The answer was almost obvious. Bruce's father had faked his death, and his true identity was the mysterious Batman. Once one grasped this, it became clear why Batman appeared at Hogwarts at that crucial moment. The father had come to rescue his son. "You looked after Hogwarts, so I'll look after your son too," Dumbledore thought to himself, then handed the cloak to Bruce. "By the way, I mentioned before that I wanted you to learn something from me, and that invitation still stands." End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.